Of the Lane County Budget Committee, and the official minutes of the meeting are being recorded as authorized by ORS 192.650, subparent 1. Members of this body currently present are myself, Dennis Hitchmans,
Larry
Laurie Trieger, citizen member.
Pete Sorensen.
Dale Sonberg. Herb Vlodman. Hey Stewart.
and Commissioner Sid Lykin. Okay. The minutes of the May 10th, 2016 meeting are being passed around. And I still don't know if minutes is the right word. Certainly the review of the actions and the agenda for the May 10th meeting are being presented. When you're ready, I would entertain the motion to approve those minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of May 10th, 2016. Any additions or corrections?
I just wanted to know, you kind of alluded to the basics of what are these minutes actually telling us? Seems like all they are is really except for the roll call and the motion to approve the last minutes, they're pretty much just the agenda of the meeting as opposed to the minutes of the meeting.
Yes.
So, I don't know if any one of us is really in a position to challenge the idea that these are not compliant with the idea of minutes, but they aren't really helpful in describing what happened in the meeting. So, what do you think we should do about that, Dennis? Because you're a man of action.
I am. And I'm also a good listener, and I'm being told by budget staff and Steve Prohaski, County Administrator, that this is the format that is appropriate. The meeting is being recorded as authorized by ORS 192.650. And so I'm looking to them to tell me and this group that these are the minutes and the format that are legal and what the county is doing.
Well, I'm not saying they're not legal because we have lawyers that advise the county on what is or isn't legal. I'm talking about whether they're helpful or not. And just because they might meet a minimum legal standard doesn't really say, I mean, all meetings that are recorded, you can always go back and look at the whole meeting if you have the time and review what are we about to embark on here, a 3-hour meeting. Well, the minutes are supposed to summarize some of the things that happened in the meeting, not just to replay the whole meeting. So,
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Commissioner, I think the process we have for keeping minutes for the work sessions, for the Budget Committee work sessions, is consistent with what we do for all Board of Commissioners meetings, which is we have very minimal written minutes that meet the requirements of state law, and the videos that are taken both for board meetings and for Budget Committee meetings and work sessions that we're in, which are all posted online and available to anyone in the public for inspection, are really the more detailed version of what actually happens at these meetings. So, again, the written minutes are intended to be to comply with state law, and as opposed to trying to create a somewhat subjective interpretation of what's discussed here in a written form, we allow the actual audio and video document to serve as the detailed minutes for these meetings.
why do we need the vote of the committee to approve the minutes, since that's also on the tape? If we're going to follow that thing, we wouldn't need to just have a roll call or votes on it, because those are all covered by the audio recording.
My understanding is that any decision made by the committee, which the motion to approve minutes is a decision, does need to be detailed in the written minutes.
But maybe not
So
the
that's why
roll call.
it's different.
Maybe not the roll call.
Well, who is here and, yeah, they have said both. Who's in attendance and any decisions made by the committee are what have to be detailed.
I have a question just along these same lines. This is a change in format. Last year we had, in previous years, more detailed minutes, so something changed to make the decision to go to this lower information format.
Yeah, and actually, even the ones that we did last year were a change from prior years, probably before you were on the committee. We had a board secretary who attended all board meetings, all budget committee meetings. That was one of the budget reductions done in county administration, so that position was eliminated. Now, the last couple of years, I had a budget staff member doing it, and once we talked with legal, we didn't know if that time was where we should be spending our time on doing those minutes versus what the Board of Commissioners was doing in their meetings. So we kind of following the same format.
Commissioner, would you like to make a motion to go back to the old way, so to speak? Or should it be tabled for further review by the Board of Commissioners and county staff to set a policy?
Well, why don't we rule or get this motion approved, and then when we get to budget committee business, we can bring that up.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as written for May 10th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Again,
Yes.
and
Thanks.
we did have the issue of last Tuesday where a couple of folks showed up a little bit late after the original introductions, and we have corrected that they will show us in attendance. And again, I think it's a policy decision if they come in an hour late, how you want to reflect that, or if they come in 5 minutes late, they should certainly get credit for attendance. Okay. Any other committee business? Okay. We have Health and Human Services, Alicia Hayes for a second.
Stalling until Pat sits down.
What's
I
that?
said I'm stalling until Commissioner Farr sits.
Okay.
I may seem late, but I'm actually early.
So
I wasn't calling you out. I just, before everybody came up here,
it's my understanding that we're defending the nickel. Are we now up to 10 cents?
I actually brought you all nickels. Yes, that's true. Actually, I'm going to invite staff up to the circle.
Yes.
They're not at the table.
And I neglected to do it yesterday or Tuesday. Can we have staff introduce themselves?
Yeah, I forgot too, and remember Karen, but I've got it, look, in big bold, introductions. And then we'll grab the staff in the back, we'll have them in the back.
And you have some folks here?
We do. So we'll start with the folks up here, and then we'll go to the folks back there. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Excellent. I'm going to actually start with Jocelyn, if you wouldn't mind. We'll just go this way.
Jocelyn Warren, I'm the Public Health Manager. I'm Andrea Musicant from Developmental Disability Services.
I'm Mike Barnhart. I'm the Clinical Financial Services Manager.
Karen Gaffney, Assistant Director.
Alicia Hayes, Director.
Lisa Nichols, Assistant Director.
Lenise Colberg, Admin Manager.
Ron Jell, the manager of the community health centers.
Steve Manella, Human Services Manager.
I'm Bruce Obel, Trillium Behavioral Health Medical Director.
And Sia, you want to start?
Sia Baskerville, Public Health Prevention Services Section Supervisor.
Brian Johnson, epidemiologist, Public Health Prevention Section.
Cindy Morgan, Clinical Disease and Public Health Section. Connie Sullivan, WIC Program Supervisor. Chelsea Whitney, Nurse Family Partnership Supervisor in the Public Health. Kathleen Frenner, Youth Services, who were part of the presentation on Tuesday. Carla Ayers, Division Manager with Wayne County Behavioral Health.
So, did I get everybody? Yeah. Okay, good. So I know it looks a little bit like Reader's Theater up here. But we're going to follow the same format with our numbers to start off with. Numbers you won't find in your budget book.
The number of community health center primary care clinics located throughout the metro community, 6.
The amount clinical financial services billed in March 2016, $1.5 million.
The number of households served with human services energy assistance, 10,582.
The number of veteran benefit interviews conducted through Human Services, 5,161.
The number of individuals who received care from the community health centers in 2015, 24,289.
The grant revenue to Health and Human Services as a result of the work done by the Resource Development Position, $1.4 million.
The percentage of all pregnant women in Lane County served last year by WIC, 45%.
The number of clinical practitioners, including therapists, mental health associates, interns, and peers, credentialed at Trillium Behavioral Health, 1,092.
The number of developmental disabilities abuse investigation screenings in 2015, 541. Okay, here's audience participation. Can anybody guess the number of communicable disease reports in 2015 to Lane County that required contact investigation? Connie, you, no. Cindy can't answer. Anybody guess? Contact investigation, 2,811.
The percentage reduction in infant mortality in communities with nurse-family partnership, 61%.
The number of homeless people who receive services through Human Services, 14,449.
The number of adults with developmental disabilities served, 1,030.
The approximate number of Oregon Health Plan members accessing behavioral health services every month, 12,000.
The number of children and youth served this year by developmental disabilities, 737.
The increase in tuberculosis cases in Lane County from 2014 to 2015, 125%.
The number of patient visits provided at the community health centers in 2015, 62,200.
The approximate number of Oregon Health Plan members in Lane County, 100,000.
Here's another audience participation one. Any guess of the number of people served through the Human Services Division last year? Almost 60,000. It was 59,263 people. And public health is on call and ready to respond 24/7.
I would have gotten that one.
You would have. Should have asked that one. Again, I just want to point out you've got the handout has all that information of the numbers as well as highlights. And now we're just going to do a quick recap of highlights for each of our divisions.
Okay. So administration is the division within Health and Human Services that provides administrative infrastructure for the other 8 divisions. Our division handles the standard administrative functions. Additionally, we have a dedicated resource development position. This position is 80% funded by general fund and works with the divisions to apply for new and continued grant funds. In the last year, the department was awarded a total of $1.4 million grant funds as a direct result of this position. Health and Human Services subcontracts out more than $25 million or 21% of our budget to nonprofit or other organizations to build a comprehensive delivery system for services in our community. The Direct Program Support Unit is responsible for planning and monitoring the department's extensive subcontracted service system. Communications with the community. In the last year, Health and Human Services has had 3 times the number of media placements and appearances than any year to date. This means, on average, the work of the department was being talked about by some form of media more than 8 times per day, each and every day of 2015. We work closely with each division to handle the administrative functions. By taking on this role, the division staff can focus on the program work of providing direct service. Our role is to support each division. We are successful when our programs are successful.
Clinical Financial Services has a unique role in H&HS in that we provide services directly to the Community Health Center and to Lane County Behavioral Health. Specifically, we offer 4 services. We do credentialing, next-gen support, medical billings, and financial analysis. So imagine this. Let's say you're going to go to the doctor this afternoon. Do you know if the doctor is qualified to perform the services you need? Well, our credentialing team verifies the licenses, the certifications, and the education of all the health professionals at the CHC and the behavioral health. Now, when you see your doctor, how confident are you in the computer system that tracks your health records? Well, we have a clinical solutions team that works with all the medical staff to make sure that NextGen, which is our electronic health record, has appropriate documentation and tracks the health of all of our patients to ensure the best care possible. Now, when you leave the medical offices, well, somebody has to pay the bill. Our billing team reviews all the medical bills, works with the insurance companies, collects the money, and then sends out statements. And lastly, if you like your provider, you hope you're going to be able to see them for years to come. Well, our financial analysis supports the clinic management so that they can make the best decisions possible to keep the clinics operating at low cost. So in conclusion, Clinical Financial Services provides much-needed support to the community health centers and the Lane County Behavioral Health to help them fulfill their mission to provide excellent health care to the citizens of Lane County.
The community health centers. You may know that the community health centers acts as a safety net provider of primary care services to some of Lane County's most vulnerable citizens, the uninsured, the homeless, and low-income individuals. We excel at serving the Hispanic community. 20% of our patients are Hispanic compared to 8% of the general population. You may have attended the grand opening of our 6th clinic last November and be pleased to hear that we provided access to 4,066 new patients in 2015. With our continued growth, the Community Health Center is a major Lane County employer, employing 162 employees. Our clinical staff are organized into patient care teams, including providers, patient care coordinators, nurses, and integrated behavioral health specialists working together to best meet the needs of every patient, every time, and every site. Our services also include prenatal care. Last year, we provided prenatal care to over 400 women, and also preventive dental services that served almost 11,000 kids in WIC programs, Head Start programs, and schools throughout Lane County. I trust that you will share how proud we are to say that last year we provided more than 62,200 visits to 24,289 Lane County residents. How proud we are that our programs are recognized for high-quality services, outperforming our Oregon peers in a number of nationally recognized quality measures. And how humbled we are to hear comments like this from a new patient who previously only received services in an emergency room. He said, "I am grateful to all of you for the wonderful services you have provided to me and my family. You really understand our needs."
Developmental Disability Services continues to implement various state initiatives as well as make great strides to streamline internal processes. These efforts include continuing to implement the K-Plan, where children and adults receive in-home supports. Developmental Disabilities is also supporting the state's Employment First initiative through our collaboration efforts with the school systems and vocational rehabilitation in order to find individuals competitive employment. Next on the horizon is the implementation of the Home and Community-Based Services Mandate, HCBS, where the focus lies on the rights of people and honoring their choices in all settings. Internally, we have been actively engaged in building out our new electronic health record, Caseworthy, where we go live in November. This will allow for many efficiencies in our office and to provide overall better customer service. We're very proud of our newest case management team that specializes in transition aid services, supporting individuals moving from high school to adulthood. Developmental Disabilities is committed to supporting Lane County residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities in leading fulfilling lives.
The Human Services Division focuses on the social determinants of health, stable housing, employment, income, food security for over 59,000 Lane County residents. Through our energy, supportive housing, human services, veterans, and workforce programs, we compassionately serve our community. 14,500 homeless people were served this past year. Our Veterans Service Office, renowned in the state, served over 5,000 appointments to veterans and their dependents. Our one-year retroactive awards in Lane County totaled over $8 million. And benefits to Lane County and the economy were over $140 million, the highest in the state. So even though we don't have the highest veterans population, we have the highest return on VA benefits in the state through our Veterans Service Office. We partner with the City of Eugene and Springfield through the Human Services Commission and with a broad coalition of private sector and public sector organizations through our Poverty and Homelessness Board. This past year, and Commissioner Farr had been involved with this, we served over 400 veterans through the 365, Operation 365 program. And those are veterans that otherwise wouldn't have been housed, and this was a partnership with the City of Eugene and with the Housing Authority. The next fiscal year, we're going to pivot and we're going to focus on the chronically homeless in our community. We're really excited. We're starting a new project called FUSE, Frequent User Service Engagement. And what that's about is working with public safety, working with the courts, working with the hospitals, working with healthcare, working with human services, and focusing on folks that are overutilizing our public systems. And the idea here is to house them and to save resources to other public systems. We will also, in the next year, be expanding our Housing First program. That's low barrier housing for folks who continue to have issues with alcohol and drug and mental health issues, getting them into housing and then serving them while they're housed. To move upstream, we're really focusing on working with the schools, working on prevention. And that work on prevention is focused on youth homeless diversion and family homeless diversion. And in particular, we're working with the 15th Night Initiative that was sponsored by the City of Eugene and many other private and public organizations in the community in order to keep over 300 kids who are not living with their families of origin in housing and in school. The concept is that we want these kids to be able to graduate from high school and go on and lead productive lives. Finally, our employment and training programs serve over 8,000 Lane County residents. And, this is really the link to our economic development programs. The idea is, we help people get employment, we work with employers, and in doing so, these families can raise their kids and do well in Lane County.
Public health protects and promotes the health of the people of Lane County through surveillance, disease investigation and control, education, interventions, and health policy development. We work closely with our state and local partners in many sectors, including other government agencies, healthcare, transportation, business, and education, to name a few. We use scientific evidence and best practices to develop and evaluate policies and interventions to improve health for all people. Research shows that people live longer and better in areas in the U.S. with strong local public health systems. And there is growing appreciation, both in the state and in the nation, for the role that public health has in protecting and improving population health, the middle aim of the triple aim. Our goals for the future include improving our surveillance systems so we can collect a greater variety of data in a timely way. Better data means better programs. And we also will be developing better communication strategies and tools to share that data and health information more broadly and more often with partners and the larger community. It's a bright future for the public health system and for Lane County Public Health, and we're committed to meeting new challenges and to continuous quality improvement.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting us all to share these remarkable programs this afternoon. Trillium Behavioral Health, TBH, is an essential partner in the success of our Regional Coordinated Care Organization, the CCO, and that's the Trillium Community Health Plan. This is the public-private partnership in Lane County that manages the OHP benefit for 100,000 residents. We believe it is the best CCO in the state. For the past 3 years, TBH has been actively leading the community effort to integrate primary care and behavioral health. We now have 8 integrated clinics and are recognized by Oregon Health Authority as the state leader. One clinic said to us this month, "The integration project has challenged us to change. Workflow has shifted from siloed care to team-based care." TBH care coordination staff plays a critical role in helping members access appropriate care, assuring providers are offering quality care, and coordinating services across different providers for our members. An example of this care coordination is the system of care approach for children and their families that organizes professional and informal supports to address family needs. Last week, 2 TBH staff attended a meeting at a school for a family with 5 children and extensive life, behavioral health, and chronic physical health challenges. The team meeting was a huge success. There were 23 people in attendance. The next day, one of the TBH staff met the family at Lane County Behavioral Health and helped them engage in treatment, meet the therapist, and get connected. For the first time in years, this family has hope that the system is working with them.
Thanks, everybody, for your elevator speeches. Fast way to do budget with all that depth. So now as last time, we wanted to have plenty of time for question and answers and see where you take the conversation after hearing these quick overviews of our programs. But before we do that, we had a couple of questions from Tuesday that I just want to touch on. I'm not going to get to all of the questions, but I thought if I could get some of the answers here today, that would save me writing them and turning them in, and also to get it to you in a timely manner for your discussion. So hopefully behind me is a pie chart of where detailed the programs that receive general funds. So not just the divisions, but the actual programs. So you had a question about that, and you had a question about the metrics and the measurements of how we use our programs, how we make sure we're using our general fund most effectively. And you asked also how we decided that these were the most effective programs to fund. So I'm going to answer that one first. So I think I shared with you last time that this team, including the two sitting back there that look really relieved because they had to do this 2 days ago, got together and knew we were going to have to take some budget reductions. So we looked across the department, not just in the division, and said, here's your 2% cut, it was the instructions from our county administrator, and we think that's a good way to do business. What does our community need? Given the limited funds. So we made those decisions, and so the budget you have in front of you was decided on by this team of folks and the programs, again, to find the most effective programs and timely programs for our community. So I want to let you also know that you have soft sheets in your budget book that give you more information about the programs and how the general fund is spent in the department. I'm going to zip through this really quick, and I am going to read it because I have a time limit too. So the first two up there I'm going to cover really quickly are the two smallest, the 1%. So in admin, you heard Lenise talk about our resource developer. I think it's at 1.4 or 6.4%. And it was able to bring into the department, and actually into the community, not just the department, 1.4 million in increased grants. The other position, there's an FTE for commitment services at behavioral health. That one FTE brings the team up to 2.5 people doing investigations. And last year, they investigated more than 779 people who were deemed danger to themselves or others. And of those, 188 were committed. So real quick on the three larger ones. In youth services, general fund supports supervision, detention, treatment programs, food, nutrition, and administration. Youth services has a long history of using evidence-based programs like EPICS and cognitive behavioral interventions to work with youth. And one of the indicators we look at is the success in the drop. It's successful in the drop in youth recidivism. In public health, WIC is one of the longest running and most studied public health programs nationally, demonstrating healthier birth weights, fewer birth complications, and school readiness. In Lane County, we serve more than 7,000 women and children each month in WIC. Funding for the home visiting nurses in maternal child health results in fewer low birth weights and other significant improvements for this population. In communicable diseases and immunization section, we investigate every reportable disease and condition in Lane County. TB, STDs, bat bites, measles, wait, here's a big one, gastrointestinal illnesses, and everything in between. Last division I want to cover is the human services, where funds support veteran services and poverty programs operated by a number of community nonprofits. A couple of indicators here that include almost 69% of veterans receiving a favorable determination regarding their benefits from the VA, and 95% of clients exiting our supportive housing program are moving into stable and permanent housing. I just did a snapshot given our time, but I wanted to answer your question about how we decided and how we know we're being successful. So I think we get to open it up to you. I'm going to pass it back to you, Chair.
Cory?
I have a really quick question about WIC, which is always near and dear to my heart, especially with Connie, as a former WIC mom myself, 21 years ago. The 7,000 women a month, is that visits or moms? Is that an unduplicated number, or that's an astounding number?
That's the number of women, infants, and children that we serve each month. Unduplicated over a year's time is over 12,000, closer to 13,000. But people do participate many months or a couple of years in a program.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Lycan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to get this number correctly. So 100,000 people are on basically the Oregon Health Plan in Lane County. So that's roughly 28%. So how does that match up to other counties in the state?
I think it's pretty average.
Is it pretty average?
I think it is.
Okay.
I mean, there will be variation. There'll be some counties that have more, and some counties that maybe have a little less. But I think it's pretty average.
Is there maybe a way? I mean, obviously not here, but is there a way that we might be able to get that number just
for every county?
Yeah, just to have a comparison. See where we are. Very good. Thank you.
We can do that for you.
Commissioner Boziger?
Thanks. For my first round, I'll just concentrate on general fund use. The WIC and the maternal child health use of general fund, is that to provide a match to the federal programs that's required by the federal programs?
In WIC, it's not a strict match requirement like we're used to in Medicaid. Certainly, in order to receive the allocation that we get, we have to serve a certain number of clients, and the funding that we get isn't sufficient all by itself to serve those. So in some ways, we think about it as necessary to hit our caseload number, but it's not the same sort of match that Medicaid is. On the maternal child health side, we do bill for those services, so that would be more like a traditional Medicaid match.
So is there a leverage, do you know roughly what the leveraged amounts are of other funds with that general fund?
Overall in the department?
For the, how much WIC funding do we bring, funds do we bring in with the?
South Form 17 will give you leverage detail down at the bottom.
Okay.
Part of the team, that's right.
Is that for the WIC program, and then what about for the maternal child health?
It's in that same section of the SOS forms.
That's 17 on WIC and...
It's labeled Health Services High-Risk Pregnant Women is the maternal child.
Okay, so 15 is that one.
So that's 15? Okay, I can look at that in a minute. So while I'm still on general fund use in H&HS, I know that the communicable diseases is actually a mandated service from the state, and that's why we fund it. And we don't get a match or anything for that. So that's the portion of public health that absolutely makes sense, because it's one of the things we have to do as a county. Human Services Commission, they kind of split it between veterans and the rest of it. City of Eugene has issued their draft budget. Have they raised their general fund contribution to the Human Services Commission, or are they still directly designating funds like they've done in the past?
The proposed budget and the presentation that the Eugene City Manager gave last night proposes continued service level for their contribution to human services. The Budget Committee, in their conversation last night, and city councilors are talking about trying to increase the amount of their contribution and to get on a path to go back to the level of contribution they had prior to the recession.
Yeah, I'll say this just one time. We managed to balance a $4 million hole without cutting people, but we did cut a lot of staff positions. Their draft budget adds, 27 FTE? And set records in spending. yet they haven't gotten back to the level of contribution to the Human Services Commission they were at 5 years ago. If they do not bring it back up, I'm going to recommend that we drop ours to the equal level with the city of Eugene. Because why the county, who is really in a bad situation, is subsidizing for the city of Eugene cutting back on theirs bothers me greatly. And they've got to fix that problem. You know, they've been on a steady decline in their contributions to the Human Services Commission, while we've been on a steady increase at the same time as our general fund's been on a steady decrease. And that just does not make sense, because they have way more resources than we have available, yet we're supplementing, and they're getting to redirect. You know, and you know, don't get me started on the 15th night and being sponsored by the city of Eugene rather than hijacked by the city of Eugene. But that's a whole nother story.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
I have a question for our community, or I guess our federally qualified health clinics.
Yes, sir.
I was curious about when we started those clinics, we had to pretty much balance our service to different individuals. Some would get double reimbursement to provide service to folks that don't have any insurance. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I was just curious, are we still under that model, or has the Affordable Care Act kind of changed that a little bit?
No, Commissioner Stewart, we're still under that model where we do receive cost-based reimbursement, or a cost-based reimbursement model to, in essence, overcompensate us for Medicaid services so that we have funds to pay for the uninsured. And so we still have about 20% of our individuals who are uninsured, notwithstanding the increase in the Affordable Care Act. So we still provide a good amount of service to uninsured individuals.
Okay, so we're able to balance that,
yes.
Sounds like. And it's when we, I think, approved the last clinic, we were hoping at some point to be able to serve about in excess of 30,000 people. Is that still kind of our goal, to be able to?
Yes, and we are adding new patients at a rate of about a little over 500 a month, new patients now from our expanded clinic capacity.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Michael.
So this is a question I'd like to ask as many times as possible, not only during budget, but during the Board of Commissioners. So I think it was last year we voted to increase the potential compensation for the, especially on the healthcare side, so the medical care side, try to recruit folks to come in, physicians, PAs, nurses, so on and so forth. Can you maybe provide an update where we are as far as staffing concerns are at the clinics? And again, we're not able to provide signing bonuses like some of the hospitals and others are, but maybe can you provide an update to see where we are? Because I think the information we're hearing on the service that's been being provided is significant, and you know, it's important, obviously, for on the staffing side. So maybe just an update where we are.
Sure, Commissioner Liken. It continues to be a challenge with every recruit. In being able to provide a compensation level that is competitive in the market. One of the components, quite frankly, we struggle with is not to be able to offer some of those other things like signing bonuses and so forth. Many individuals are looking more at salary rather than the total benefit package, and that's an area where historically our overall benefit package has been a selling point, but with many individuals, particularly who dual working couples, the value of the benefits is not quite as strong as it might be. One of the areas that we benefit from is that we can offer loan repayment to new grads. That's a significant benefit as being a federally qualified health center, although that has a life cycle. So typically when you get 2 or 3 years in, that loan repayment cycle is done, and then retention becomes a real challenge. We have expanded our recruiting this past year really at a national level, and we've been very successful in getting folks in. For instance, we had a nurse practitioner earlier this week from Pennsylvania who grew up in the community, wanted to come back, and so we were able to recruit her. We've recruited physicians from Arizona and West Virginia and other parts of the country, but it continues to be a challenge, and it really is a challenge of the more senior practitioners who, quite frankly, we're just not competitive in the market for many of those individuals. So it is not just getting them in, but being able to retain them, particularly, as you know, in primary care.
Well, so it's, would you say it's improved at all, or is it, do you kind of feel that it's kind of flat, or what's your thoughts on it?
It has improved, but it continues to be a challenge.
And Ron, can you remind us how many providers we recruited?
Thank you. We have brought in 11 new primary care practitioners in the past year, and that's a mix of physicians and nurse practitioners into the community. So really that national recruiting strategy has really assisted us. I joked with a couple of our providers after we opened the Delta Oaks Clinic. Their parents were coming to visit. These were new grads. I said, well, you know, we built a clinic just for you. And certainly our facilities are a great assistance for us in recruiting. And quite frankly, many of these individuals are dedicated to serving the community, the uninsured community, and so they're willing to take less than they would in the private sector, but that only goes so far. But we also have a significant challenge in recruiting the support staff, particularly nursing staff and other clinical support staff. Trillium, I heard the other day, has 25, not Trillium Behavioral Health, but Trillium Community Health Plans, it has 25 nurse openings. I don't know how many nurse openings are at Riverbend or the other hospitals. I mean, nursing is one of our biggest challenges in recruiting.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Just very briefly on that, we have a list of board assignments that we it's not a long list, but so one of the assignments that we have that we've not really done anything about is addressing how do we attract more primary care givers to this county, and it's something that the board is aware of, and it's an emergency, and it's a real serious issue that has to be addressed, and being innovative about how we bring them in here. Let's not talk about it right now, but it really is something that we'll need to focus a great deal of attention on. The only thing I wanted to say is you guys don't cheer yourselves enough. You really don't. And Jocelyn, you said something fantastic. You said there's a bright future for public health systems and for public health in Wayne County. And I've been standing on the sidelines watching this for a long time, and something that Bruce said really drills that down. For the first time in years, this family has hope that the public health system is going to work for them. Well, see, I'm seeing that wherever I turn in our public health system. I'm seeing tremendous advances at leveraging intergovernmental health, interagency help, and we're just seeing so many things happen together that I've never seen before, personally. But once again, I'm on the sidelines. Let's talk about the Poverty and Homelessness Board alone, how it is leveraging just a broad spectrum of help to bring a focus on very specific issues. Last year it was veterans housing. This year we're focusing on housing first, and we're making tremendous headway. I just wanted to mention that people live longer and better in areas with strong public health systems, right? And I think I'm pleased and impressed with what I'm personally seeing as far as the future of health and human services in this county. I think there's some momentum, there's something special happening right now. And I see a lot of new faces that weren't here maybe 4 years ago, and some that were here decades ago.
We made them sit together.
But it really is exciting that we're beginning to once again leverage all kinds of help to focus on our specific needs that we have in this county. And Commissioner Bozievich brings up a good point regarding the participation of the city of Eugene in our Human Services Commission, and their it has diminished through the years. But really right now, we're seeing a focus on the budget committee over at the City of Eugene to really change that. And I think the reason they are changing that is because of the powerful leadership that we're seeing from right over here, from Stephen Ellen, from our Human Services staff, the Human Services Commission staff. So once again, even in that situation, I'm seeing good things happening, and I'm really pleased and proud to be a part of it. So you don't cheer yourselves enough. Cheer yourselves a bit more.
And that's why we don't do it. Okay.
I agree with those comments. It's 2:45. Thank you very,
Thank you very much for your
Good job, all of you. Thank
Marcia's.
What's that? Thanks.
And I didn't even.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more to come. I think that's just the skin and bones of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Bruce. Take care.
Good, sir. Great job.
Don't sit here, please.
Okay.
Oh, this I got the baby chair.
Before we start item number 4, Public Works, I need to disclose a potential conflict. One of the contractors that the county does business with, Pioneer Recycle Services, I am an investor in that company. So I will watch carefully for any conflict in that area.
Okay.
Okay, so now we have the other Marcia.
Yeah. Oh, did you have the other Marcia today?
Yeah, we had the other Marcia.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Chair Gibson and members of the Budget Committee. I'm Marcia Miller, the Public Works Director, and I have with me today Tanya Heaton, my Budget Manager, Mike Russell, Parks Manager, and Corey Buller, the Lane Event Center Manager, and all the rest of my qualified division managers back here. I'm going to start off. In Public Works, we provide, as you can see from the picture, we provide a wide variety, we better tell them to calm down, of services to the residents of Lane County. I think it may be safe to say that we provide the most diverse services of any other department in the county, because we provide everything from enforcement of land use, building codes, nuisances, and truck weights, to maintenance of roads, bridges, fleet, county facilities, to recycling, hazardous waste and waste disposal, and also to recreation and entertainment activities through our Parks and Lane Event Center. So it's quite a variety of services that we provide. In Public Works, we have 8 divisions that are listed there. We have 9 funds and 3 sub-funds. Our goals, when we started off on this budget process, were to work toward long-term financial stability, to provide the highest level of service to our customers as possible within our resources. Each year, we tend to highlight 2 areas of Public Works. The 2 areas, the reason that Corey and Mike are sitting at the table is because the 2 areas that we're going to highlight today are Parks and Lane Event Center. I'm going to provide just a brief overview of the department budget, and then I will let each of them present some information on their particular divisions. So this is of course, you've seen this in your previous budget presentations. You're all familiar with the county's strategic plan and the three strategic areas of focus and the 7 key objectives.
we've aligned our Public Works strategic plan to be in alignment with the county's plan. And so we have 22, I'm not going to read them, but 22 strategies under the 7 key objectives for our Public Works strategic plan. Looking at our revenue across the department by source, generally, revenues are down. Property and rentals are up slightly. Licenses and permits are up slightly. Taxes and assessments are also up slightly, but generally everything else, as you can see from this chart, the yellow is the 16-17 and the orange is 15-16, are generally down a bit. This is a chart that shows our requirements by fund. And as you can see from this chart, the road fund is still our largest, although that may not be for long with the way we're going, but for now, the road fund is still the largest, with the second largest being the solid waste disposal fund, and then the fleet fund, or the motor and equipment pool, is the next largest. And then, of course, we have a lot of other smaller funds. Land management, the general fund, which we, up until a couple of years ago, didn't have any general fund in our budget, but in the last couple of years we do now have a small portion. Parks and open space and public lands corners, special revenue fund, and the Lane Event Center fund. This is a list of the divisions and all the services that are provided by Public Works. Generally speaking, aside from the road fund, this year, all of our other funds in the department are relatively stable. The land management has seen a slight increase in their activity through development activity, and that has provided us with some opportunities to add some additional staff in order to meet the timelines and our customer needs. We're going to monitor and continue to look at our revenue and expenses on the land management side so we can continue to meet those demands. We've worked hard to achieve financial stability across the department, even through the recession and also through the reduction in federal forest money. We have a goal across the department to have a 15% prudent person reserve, and I am very proud to say that this is the first year that absolutely every fund in the department has met that 15% goal. It's the first time ever, I think, maybe. So very proud to say that. Looking at the changes in the department, we have as you can see here, operating revenue, a 10.2% reduction. Personnel's down 4%, materials and services 3.3%, capital outlay 3.1%, capital projects down 50%. Total operating expenses are down about 10.5%. Our net operating balance is actually up 18.3%. And the reason for that is our revenue is down 8.1%, but our expenses, pardon? Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, 8.1. And our expenses are down 8.6%, and that means that basically our bottom line has improved. Thank you, Tom. Get my percentages and my millions mixed up. This is a chart of Public Works FTE over the last 10 years. Public Works as a whole has been in a reduction mode for the last 10 years. We went from a high of 383 FTE in 2006 to 328 in 2016, and that was with the addition of the Lane Event Center of 14.5 in fiscal year 12-13, and then with the addition of facilities in fiscal year 14-15 of 22 FTE. But that equates to a total loss of over 90 FTE in the department over the last 10 years. Being in a reduction mode has really challenged us to look for innovations, efficiencies, partnering opportunities, and revenue enhancements. For example, aggressively pursuing some grant funding. This is the FTE changes in 16-17. We had a total of 12.5 FTE reduction in the department. In the road fund, it was a total of 9.5, although one of those was actually a transfer from the road fund to the motor and equipment pool. So really the net in the road fund was 8.5. One in the general fund, that was in facilities, one in the Corners Preservation Fund, and 2 in Waste Management. Now, as County Administrator mentioned in his budget message, we've been able to achieve those reductions of staff without any layoffs. They were all vacant positions. However, it's good to note that even though they were without layoffs, they certainly are not without impacts. Road fund changes. Our operating revenue is down 19.4%. Personnel's down 8, materials and service down 7.6, capital 12.8, fiscal transactions 83.3, total operating expenses are down 18.3%, and the net operating balance is down 6.5%. When we first went into this budget cycle, we were looking at a $2.9 million gap. We were able to close that gap with a number of things. One, of course, we don't have Secure Rural Schools funding. We reduced our other revenue by about 1.6 million. And we reduced personnel. We had VSIP savings, and those were the savings that we had from the voluntary separation program, where people left the organization, and if we hired people to fill some of those positions, they would come in at a lower step and with different benefits. So we had some savings there. We also had the 9.5 FTE reduction in the road fund, and we had some health benefit savings. So the combination of all those things amounted to 1.25. Materials and services were reduced by almost $1 million. Capital was reduced by almost $800,000. Fiscal transactions by $4 million. So the total operating expenses, we eliminated a debt payment of about $5 million, and we reduced other expenses of $2 million. So that left us net operating balance decreased.
What are fiscal transactions?
They're transfers, most of them.
Okay.
So in the large one was a transfer from the road fund to the debt service fund.
Okay. Thank you.
This next chart is really exciting. This is the most exciting chart in our entire presentation. I'm like, so, okay, so,
we like the colors.
Yes, well, I like what it does. So we're in the second year of a 3-year plan to close the structural gap. And as you can see on the chart on the left, at the beginning of 14-15, the red circle shows our gap at that point in time between our annual expenses, which is the yellow, and the annual revenue, which is the green. And we anticipated in this budget cycle in 16-17 that would be our gap in the second red circle. But the reality is that in 14-15, during that year, we were able to close that gap more. And then that resulted in the 16-17 year closing that gap even further. So we're not there yet. But I think this might be the first year since I've been here anyway that I've actually seen the JAWS graph start to close. So anyway, that was very exciting news. Looking forward, we have a number of efforts underway to enable us to reach our goal of financial stability and service delivery. The Waste Management has just finished a system assessment, and they will be bringing recommendations to the board on that. There's a Fleet Regional Cooperative that is being organized right now that is a couple of cities and utilities and school districts, and that cooperative will allow us to get better fuel prices because we'll be able to leverage our resources together. The Lane Event Center is doing 2 things, a facilities assessment and a market demand analysis, so we can determine the best way to use our resources at that facility to increase our revenue potential. The Road Fund Reserve Analysis, we're in the midst of that. That will enable us to determine what the appropriate and prudent reserve is for the Road Fund Reserve. We're in the midst of working on the Parks Master Plan. We're also doing road product analysis. We are investigating new products and rock types that can reduce oil and extend the life of our surfaces of our roads. And last, the transportation system plan. That will enable us to identify transportation needs for the next 20 years, and it will position us to be better situated to receive state and federal money. And then the last chart, this is, I know at least some of you like pictures, so we want to make sure we have plenty of pictures. Public Works working together to maintain and enhance the livability and sustainability of Lane County's natural and built environments. And the pictures, as you can see on the top, it's a flood situation, one of our emergency situations. We have some construction project going on there. The fair down here is actually the food that was collected at the fair, and I don't want to take away your thunder. The middle one is the parks, and then, of course, there is a chip sale. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Mike Russell from Parks, who's going to give you a little bit more information about Parks this year.
Chair Henchmans, members of the Budget Committee, thanks for giving me some time. Mike Russell, Lane County Parks and Animal Services Division Manager. Just want to quickly highlight Parks for you. In this current fiscal year, we were successful in obtaining a long-term lease from the Forest Service and have broken ground. And hopefully we'll have an announcement here in the next couple weeks on opening Archie Knowles Campground, which had been closed by Forest Service for several years, and we're able to bring that back to life. The community is very excited about that. We began construction and expansion of Harbor Vista Campground and completed a marina pump out station at Orchard Point. Just speaking to, for a long time we were not able to do capital projects just because of the lack of funding for matching money, and over the years we've worked hard to get our capital program up and going again, and we're seeing the fruits of that this year. So looking forward to next fiscal year, Parks continues to see growth in camping revenue. We thought maybe after kind of climbing out of the recession, that close to home camping might subside a little bit. That's not the trend we're seeing. We're seeing people are coming to our parks, coming to our campgrounds, and wanting to come back year after year. And then just word of mouth is getting out there about our facilities and how well they're maintained. At least that's perception, and we're doing the best we can to do that, and people are liking their experience, so they're coming back. Parks has met the department requirement for prudent person reserve, as Marcia mentioned. We're very proud of that. Just 2 fiscal years ago, we were borrowing money at the end of the fiscal year to make payroll. We're not having to do that. And it's really, I think, a testament to the strength of the fund and going forward. It's a good starting point to go forward and a solid foundation. And we continue to prioritize strategic investment in revenue producing services with the completion of and the goal to complete the Parks Master Plan. We hope to outline over the next 20 years a continuation of that and how we can become more sustainable as a service into the future. Talk a little bit about the deferred maintenance issue. We have a large deferred maintenance backlog, about $17 million system-wide, over 70 parks. But we continue to strive to incrementally address that as we can in this proposed budget. We have a couple roofs that we want to replace. As we can, we're kind of chipping away at that $17 million for that low-hanging fruit kind of stuff, and continue to do that so that our facilities continue to operate. Parks will focus on strategic investments in revenue-generating services, camping, moorage, and day use. Those are kind of our bread and butter services, and continue building a quality service in these areas that are self-sustaining and can begin to contribute to more to address that deferred maintenance. That's the goal. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Chair and committee members, thank you for having us here and giving me this opportunity. Corey Bullard, Lane Event Center and Lane County Fair Manager. So I did want to give a little quick intro for those of you that don't know. We are a 55-acre complex near downtown Eugene here with neighborhoods on 4 sides, which has its challenges. We have 12 and a half current FTE, which comprise over 125 years of service either in the fair or in the event center, and those 12 and a half FTEs. So we've got a lot of returning and long-time workers with us. For some information, kind of some numbers and some fun facts that I always like to throw out, we're hosting over 185 events each year. Approximately 1,250 uses from those events. So that includes move-in days, cleanup days, so on and so forth. 785,000 people are coming through the facility. And for those of you that were around last week, it even includes political rallies and people that are walking along and using the outside of the grounds there. We don't count them, but we get plenty of uses. 2015, we had a great fair. We're up to 109,000 people that came through the gate in 5 days last year. That was up 10%. It was a great turnout. Our net from the 2014 fair was approximately $65,000. Last year's will be closer to $200,000. So we had a very nice year. We had 5 days of very good weather. So I'm going to find some wood knock on here and we get that again this year. And some of the fun things that we get to do in conjunction with just putting on a fair is, last year was the 7th year in a row where we've recycled at least 70% of all material that's come into the fairgrounds for the fair that has gone back out as recycling instead of going to the landfill. The highest number was 2011. We actually recycled 82%. We'd like to get back up to that, but we haven't figured out how yet. And then since 2013, the fair has donated over 25,000 pounds of food to Food for Lane County just in a 2-hour window on Sunday. So that has been a great opportunity for us to give back to the community as well as drive people through the gate of the fair.
Whoever started that should be.
I know. I don't know who to thank for that, but that was a great one. In addition to that, we run a special with the Lane Blood Center. So we have a Pint for a Pass promotion. And we have given out 13,500 passes to the fair, so you can imagine how many people have gone and donated blood through that. We also support churches, youth sports groups, Boy Scouts, various other entities that come to the fair. They work in various portions, donate their time, volunteer, get supported by the fair, so it's a great opportunity for us to give back. And then the rest of the year, we have any number of opportunities where we support local businesses or entertainment, and that's through the events that we host, again, including political rallies. But where else around can you go to a Home Builders Association garage sale, a library book sale, a knife collector show, a gun show, a model railroad, all in one weekend in one spot? That's one weekend in April. So we have a very diverse group of clients, and we really appreciate all of them. This budget that we have is representing some pretty high TRT levels, and so that has allowed us the opportunity to meet those reserve requirements. We've been paying into the capital fund, and we're carrying over some excess into next year to work on this facility assessment. We've talked about that for some time now. We're going to get somebody in and take a look at all of our buildings, look at how they are condition-wise, see if there's better ways to use them or to work on them to improve those uses, and see what return on investment there is. We're hopeful that we can find some opportunities to increase revenue, increase events, and work on the flexibility to bring more in the door. So that's pretty much what I have unless we have questions.
Anything else?
No? Any questions?
Okay. We'll open up for questions. Larry?
So I heard you say the Parks Department increased their capital improvements this year, but the department overall is way down in capital improvements. So I was just wondering what that meant.
Yeah. The majority of the capital improvement decreases are in the road fund, and plus Parks has completed a couple of projects that will complete this year, 15, 16, won't be in 17 and 18. But we had a couple of grants for the road fund for some improvement projects. We also had, is that it? Oh, Waste Management is completing a large project this year also. So it's just kind of cyclical. Waste Management will develop or expand the landfill about every 8 years. 10. So you'll see it and then you won't see it for a while. In the road fund, we have such a small CIP that we work off of grants or contracts with partners to increase capital there. And Parks also relies on grants for capital improvements.
So a lot of it's just timing, which fiscal year.
Right.
Question about the new park coming online, the one from the Forestleys. How is that forecast to go out as far as supporting it? How much of it will it support itself?
Yeah, we hope to, the first year we'll see. Didn't have much to go off of from the Forest Service as far as their historical revenue. Fortunately, as a county, we are eligible for RV fee reimbursement for each campsite that we have. So that helps, about $600 a site a year just for having a campsite. So that helps, as well as the revenue that the park will generate. So yeah, we're hoping within 3 years it'll be self-supporting.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner?
Thanks. So there's approximately $4 million plus general fund coming into Public Works. Can you kind of detail where that's going and where it's coming from? I imagine that a lot of it's coming from, like, the sheriff's office into the fleet for taking care of their vehicles, or it's there's a little bit that comes in for animal services. I know we directly support, now that we've moved facility maintenance there, I imagine that's some of it. But could you kind of review where the general fund's going and where it came from real quick?
You can correct me if I'm wrong, Christine, but when the sheriff's office pays for fleet, that is revenue to the fleet, the motor and equipment pool. It doesn't come through as a general fund in our department. It comes as revenue into the motor and equipment pool.
So that'd be in the 33 million.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So our general fund is going to be animal services and property management. Am I missing one? Facilities. That's the big increase, is the facilities. Public Works is now managing county-wide facilities with 22 FTE, so that's where the big increase came in 14-15.
But we're showing 4.8 million actually in general fund support all the way back in 13-14. So it's actually decreased somewhat over time.
I think that
budget, I'll clarify for that. We always change the budget so that you can compare year to year, meaning we will look like it's always been that way in the budget document. Otherwise, you will have these wild, especially when reorgs happen. We just want you to be able to track the service.
That's what I was expecting. I was expecting
right.
to see it, and that's why I was.
Yes, sorry, that is a little confusing. So you also do have 3 SOS forms on those since they're in the general fund.
Okay. Thank you.
So Mike, question for you. After the formula change in the RD fee, have you seen any sort of increase coming from that at all to Lane County Parks?
Yeah, we saw, now it's fully implemented, about $90,000 increase just in RV fees, so that was a big...
So it's pretty close to what the estimation was.
Yes, yep.
That's good to hear.
And the thing that's going to help us more is to get more campsites online and expand existing, as well determine through the master planning process if there's opportunities to create more camping sites.
And I'm guessing 2021 World Games, you may have more folks coming out here in RV fees. And Corey, real quickly, with the success of Eugene Comic-Con, do you expect that to happen again this next year?
It is coming back, and it's bigger than last year, so plan for even bigger.
I may have to make this year.
They're actually actually starting to promote some of the guests, so you'll look for it.
My first one, my son got me in. I'm in. So.
That's
Excellent people watching.
It really is.
I don't remember the exact date. It's in the fall.
All right.
In the fall.
Okay, any other questions, Commissioner?
Just one thing really quickly, the graph that you showed that showed the two lines coming together.
Yes, that I got excited about.
Yeah, I was excited about that too. You know, I wanted to point out, and I wanted to call out Mike John sitting behind you, that at the same time that we're bringing our structural imbalance together, that's the right terminology, isn't it? Thank you. At the same time, I'm just looking at our fleet practices and the sustainable steps that we're taking our fleet. We're not just doing a better job with our fiscal resources. Can you talk about, just take a second to tell what we're doing in the fleet to make to reduce greenhouse gases?
Well, we just had recently a big reduction in our carbon footprint from the entire countywide fleet by switching all our diesel vehicles to renewable diesel. So just for the diesel vehicles themselves, that resulted in over 67% reduction. The fleet as a whole, if you calculate, it's over a 50% reduction. So but we've done a lot of work on that, and we're the very first in the state to use it as a joint partnership between us and UWIP and the city of Eugene. So we're kind of the evangelists now going around the Northwest. We get to talk to quite a few other fleet managers to spread the gospel about renewable diesel.
So we're leading the way.
Yeah.
I just wanted, we hear about that severally, but I just wanted everybody in this room to hear about that from Mike, because we are leading the way in the state as far as fleet sustainability is concerned. So way to go. Good job.
I'm on my second run.
So Mike, when we were talking about being able to increase campsites, have you still been having conversations with the Corps about Parkside Sports Park? Wasn't there a conversation about possibly the county taking that over because we could generate, the Corps is not receiving money for those campsites. If we were managing it, we could see an elevated amount of resources coming.
Right. So we had some initial discussions with the Corps about 2 years ago. It was Schwartz Park. Then over on Dorena Reservoir, they have two other campgrounds over there. Talking to them about that, and what we came to is there's some deferred maintenance issues that we weren't comfortable taking on as liabilities until they addressed. And so the Corps at that point didn't say no, they just said not yet. And so they wanted time to address those concerns through their capital improvement process. And my understanding is they have been successful in getting some of that money. So when those improvements are made, they would be ready to talk again, and we'd be ready to take those on. So, 3 years maybe, we'll talk again and see where they're at.
Okay. And just on that, Marcia, I wanted to thank you for the showing us the reductions in how we're bringing our structural imbalance together, and that's done with a lot of hard work from your department and cooperation from our employees. The VSIP program was very successful, I believe, in helping us achieve that and moving forward in healthcare costs reductions for new employees. So thanks for taking the time to highlight that today and showing the great work you're doing.
Go ahead.
So, looking at the SOS forms, getting back to my general fund questions, there's only 3 SOS forms there, and they don't come anywhere close to 4.2 million. There's, you're using $416,000 in animal services. Property management's actually generating $254,000 in revenue, and facilities is only using $815,000 in general fund. So that actually comes out to about $1 million in general fund usage, yet you're showing 4.2 in general fund usage in public works. So
You've got a difference there of discretionary general fund and general fund. And I know that gets very confusing. I apologize. But so the expenses showed in the budget document are talking about the general fund as a whole. So the expenditures in the general fund, and I believe facilities is about 3.2 million of that. I'm trying to grab that one here. 3.2 million in expenses,
right.
But 815,000 in discretionary general fund. That's the very last sauce form, actually, is facilities. If you go to the very back. And then, let's see. Property management, has its expenses are just lower than its revenue.
So the expenses are actually coming out of general fund also.
Correct.
The whole program is in that fund. So it'll have both the revenue and the expense.
Right, there's a whole bunch of revenue countywide that goes into the general fund to make up about the 88, 90 million versus our discretionary general fund, which is closer to 50.
So there's an interfund transfer that transfers of 2.4 that pay for the rest of those expenses that are non-discretionary general fund because they come in specifically for facilities to pay for that. So I get
the
that.
fund as a whole balances, but
Right.
each department within it, in the general fund, does not.
Right, but
Right.
I kind of get now.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to get the bigger picture there. So that one actually sits in the general fund, even though it's Public Works Department.
Right. Yes.
Okay, so that
Yes.
3.2, then when you start adding the other ones in there, it starts looking a little bit more like that. Okay. Likewise with animal services, there's some external revenues that come in from other places to run the shelter, City of Eugene, whatever, that now look like general fund money. So that's where the 4.2. Okay, I get it. Balances in my head now.
Any other questions?
Just a couple additional comments. I appreciate Commissioner Stewart bringing up the DSIP and the healthcare changes. This department was the department that I think we were undoubtedly the most successful with in working with both 626 and Admin Pro and our non-represented employees on the DSIP program. 22, is that right? 22 voluntary separation incentive plan participants, individuals who applied that we approved. That created, I think, a great opportunity in helping us achieve the budgeted savings without reduction, without layoffs. It also creates a challenge in terms of the number of people leaving that have been in the organization and in Public Works for many years. And then the healthcare changes were also really important there. So I think Public Works, the leadership and the staff in Public Works are good indicators of, I think, hopefully the direction that we're headed overall. I'd also add, we've talked a little bit about the changes in fleet. And I just want to give Michael Johns and Tanya and Marcia credit for the work that they did in working with us. We sort of put a focus and a target on creating efficiencies and streamlining operations, particularly internal service areas and internal costs, and vehicles was one of those. And Michael and the rest of the team just did a great job of coming up with solutions that were really workable. And I would also say that we've targeted a 10% reduction in the number of our vehicle fleet over the next 2 years. So the work is not done there. And actually, I would argue the more difficult work is ahead of us on that front. I, for one, have great confidence in Michael and the rest of the team to implement that. And then I just wanted to make a comment about succession planning. Herb, I know you asked about this. I saw a question about it in communication with Marcia Miller, who's your budget buddy. And I think, as most of you know, Marcia Miller is retiring after many years of service to our local community at the City of Eugene and to Lane County as our Public Works Director. She's done just a wonderful job over, we've got like 25 minutes, so I thought I'd just chip this.
That's fine. I have revised. Go ahead. I have a suggested revision that gives us more time.
Yes, I just wanted to make for a minute, make a comment about Marcia and her service. The work that she's done, and she's taken very seriously her role in leaving the organization in a smooth way and setting up the department to be successful. And I have long been a believer that the true test of a leader is not how well their operation does while they're there, but how well it does after they leave. And the care that she's taken in this transition process, I think, is laudable. And I wanted to share that this Commissioner Lycan has brought this up in meetings about what are we doing in both in this department as well as countywide for succession planning. We are in a recruitment process for a Public Works Director. We received 36 applicants in a nationwide search. 11 of those were qualified. We have 5 finalists that we'll be bringing in over the next few weeks. And so we have a lot of work to do there to make sure that we identify a strong leader for the department. I think you can look around the room at the division managers here, and we all have great confidence in the quality of the people that are leading each of the Public Works divisions. And I will note that 2 of them are the first women in their roles. Peggy Kepler is our new county engineer, and Lydia McKinney as a relatively new land management division manager, as well as the rest of the team here, Dan Hurley and Michael and Oren and Corey and Mike. So I feel really good about the quality of the team that we have in place, and we're going to work to bring on a department head that matches the quality that Marcia has set and that the rest of the team has. So thank you for letting me share that.
Marcia, I'm sorry to hear that. Again,
Thank you.
I can see that you've left it far better than you found it.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we are a little bit ahead. My recommendation is we go take a break till 3:35, do revenue until 4, then go to public safety from 4 to 4:45, giving us more time because staff would like direction on that particular issue tonight if possible. And then 15 minutes for budget committee business and then possible 5-minute early adjournment. So if there's no objections, go ahead.
Just one question that maybe members of the committee can think about as we near the end of the day, and this is the last budget committee work session until you have deliberations next week. I'd love to hear feedback on how this year's process has gone for you. I'd like to also be able to share just for a minute at the end of the day, I think our reflections on it and the work that we're going to continue to do to improve the process next year. So I'd like to be able to have a very brief conversation about that because I hope you've seen some improvements, but I hope you also recognize that there's opportunity for continued improvement next year.
Okay. Well, I will ask you as this meeting goes, is your priority to get the direction to staff done or make sure we have time to do what you just said? If one comes at the expense of the other, which would you prefer?
I hope one won't come at the expense of the other. I actually will tell you that the revenue discussion, I don't anticipate to take 20 minutes. I think we can shorten that up. The item 6 may take longer or may not than we've identified. So I think a 5 or 10 minute conversation about the process at the end works, unless you want to do it at the beginning, right after this break.
Okay. Well, let's take a break until 3:37. Revenue Team. Steve, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. So this, I'm going to try to be brief with this, and as we've done with all the other presentations, leave time for questions. We, as a, to kind of build on some work that we did last year, we had an internal team of budget staff from various departments that came together and literally line by line evaluated every revenue in the general fund. And what we essentially determined through that process was departments across the organization do a really good job. And you have Health and Human Service staff here, and that's one example of keeping tabs on revenues that are collected and adjusting where there's discretion to adjust under state law or other discretion that exists, and where the market will bear an increase in a fee or a fine. Departments do a really good job of keeping pace with that. What we did this year was put together a group of folks from various departments throughout Lane County to review potential new opportunities. And what we steered away from was really large policy choices that the board would be a better place for the board to have discussions about. For example, it was brought up at our leadership team meeting in January, the consideration of increasing the car rental tax. Well, that's certainly something the Board of Commissioners could consider doing. But because we didn't receive direction from the board at that time, we didn't look really strongly at those types of revenues. We focused our efforts on revenues that already exist or that we felt like there was some discretion within administratively to consider. So the folks on this revenue task team included Alex Kyler from County Administration, Sarah Chinsky and Judy Williams, and Jeff Kincaid from County Administration, Lydia McKinney from Public Works, Mike Coles from Assessment and Taxation, and Diana Avery from Health and Human Services. And so our goal was to look at revenue options that could be implemented either immediately or over the next couple of years. And again, we know the departments review fees regularly and make adjustments where they're able to. So you have in your packet a memo from me that sort of outlines the general principles and guidelines that we operated under, and then 4 one-page sheets that walk through the 4 options that we'll briefly present to you here. First, CAFA funding, which is state funding that helps support assessment and taxation. We have this is a funding source that is significantly declining. We've heard from assessment and taxation around a 20% reduction in staffing that they took in fiscal year 12-13. In the proposed budget, we were successful in stabilizing funding, maintaining stable staffing levels. We actually increased funding for extra help for assessment and taxation. One of the things that we're looking at, and we had a legislative committee earlier today that was presented, and Mr. Kyler and our legislative team are looking not just at a legislative agenda to lobby the legislature for additional CAFA funding, but actually beginning to work with the agency staff and the governor to see if we can get additional funding included in the governor's budget for the next biennium. So that is a focus that we have. I don't know, Mr. Kyler, if you have any additional comments you want to add on the CAFA funding piece.
Well, just that there are, the CAFA fund was swept by the state during the recession. There was a $5 million state general fund contribution to CAFA. And that's what we've really been focusing on legislatively. But you see in the memo, there's a couple other tools that we might be able to utilize to bring additional dollars into the CAFA fund that we haven't necessarily explored. And so the committee was a good opportunity for us to explore those methodologies as well.
There we go. Okay. So the next item is, and this is also in assessment and taxation, we have begun, we have a really successful pilot program with 7 counties. We've the state has provided funding to look at personal property taxes that have not been collected in the 7-county area. Mike Coles, our assessor, is leading that effort. And so as part of that work, we also looked at, we've had conversations over the past 2 years about the number of reappraisals that are not happening, the number of properties throughout Lane County that have not had a reappraisal over the past 20 years. And so and this is due to the decrease in staffing levels in assessment and taxation. So one of the conversations that we have begun to have on a regional basis with various taxing entities in Lane County is the opportunity to create a partnership whereby we could, various taxing and jurisdictions within Lane County could pool resources to hire an appraiser or a number of appraisers that could work and go out and do these reappraisals that all of the taxing districts would benefit from. And this is, we think, consistent with this 7-county pilot project where we're really talking about making sure that property owners, property taxpayers that are not paying a fair share for their properties are updated and that they do pay the fair share. So we've had these conversations at our regular Springfield, Eugene, Lane County meetings, as well as our regional. We have quarterly regional manager meetings with all of the city managers throughout Lane County. And we believe there is some traction there and an interest, not only in the metro area, but throughout all of our municipal governments in Lane County to pursue that effort. So those conversations are ongoing. I believe it's on our agenda for tomorrow morning at the cell meeting. And I don't know, Mr. Keller, if you have anything in addition to that.
I think that the idea of ensuring that each of the local taxing districts understands the benefit is really the challenge here. And in particular, because of the way state school funding works, where state school funding is equalized in Oregon, there's probably less incentive for a school district to really get excited by this idea. And when we've tried to do this kind of work formally in the legislature, the school districts haven't been all that enthusiastic about these proposals. But I think the opportunity to pursue this at the local level is really an interesting new twist. And again, we've set this sort of the stage for some of these innovative approaches to local revenue through the 7 counties project that we also, Commissioner Lycan really led the charge on getting that established. And maybe we are able to utilize this local effort to sort of re-engage those conversations instead.
Are you done?
No, I have 2 more, but if there are questions. Go ahead.
I'm interested in whether we have current authority to enter into agreements or some kind of memorandum of understanding with entities that would benefit from bringing up to speed the level of assessment in their areas, such as the city of Springfield, city of Eugene, maybe not the school districts for the reasons that were mentioned, maybe not the county for the reasons that were mentioned. Do we have that authority?
Would you like me to come to the table?
Yeah. Does anybody do that?
I haven't checked with legal counsel on that specific question. I haven't seen anything in the statutes that prohibits that. However, that would probably be researched out before any intergovernmental agreement or memorandum of understanding is moved forward on.
Has that been done in other counties?
I don't believe so. So we would be probably moving forward on new ground on that.
Mm-hmm. They might be significantly benefited from that.
Any district potentially would be benefited along with the county and any other taxing districts in the reappraisal area.
Yeah.
Okay. The third revenue item that we identified is wireless infrastructure development. And this is essentially looking at the fact that Lane County owns a number of properties and facilities that are geographically diverse. The ongoing need and demand for cellular coverage throughout Lane County and throughout both in the urban metro areas and in the rural unincorporated areas. And so identifying any opportunities to leverage those existing properties and facility assets to partner with cellular providers to meet the demands there. And so we provide some examples. City of Glendale, California has a 5-year contract with the expectation of generating around $500,000 over the life of the contract. And so the way that this arrangement works is essentially the governmental entity leverages its facility, and the private carrier or a third party would come in, install the infrastructure. They'd essentially lease the space from the government, and the private carrier or a third party entity would come in and install the infrastructure, maintain the infrastructure on either a lease or purchase agreement. So we think this is one, again, that has the potential for a win-win in the sense that it could meet the demand for coverage needs as well as an ongoing revenue stream for Lane County. We think it makes sense to pursue that as an option. And the fourth item is to set up as I mentioned at the beginning, our departments do a really great job of making sure that we're regularly updating. I'll give you an example. Last year we updated the supervision fee for in parole and probation. It had not been updated in, I want to say 20 years. It was a long time. And so we updated it to be consistent with what other counties charge for supervision fees. And that, as we all know, as you heard earlier in the week, parole and probation struggles with adequate state funding to hire staff to meet the demand of offenders that they're responsible for supervising. So that was one example of where we identified a fee that hadn't been updated in a while. What we'd like to do here is establish a formal structure that requires a regular review of all of our fees. So that while we know departments are doing a good job in most areas of updating those fees, let's make sure that we have a formal, more comprehensive process that we're reviewing those and then bringing forward adjustments to the Board of Commissioners as needed. Some examples include in land management. Our land management division is currently looking at the fees that are assessed for various services there. We've identified there actually was a recommendation that came from assessment and taxation staff to say, there's work that assessment and taxation does for permits that are issued in land management, but that assessment and taxation does. So how do we make sure that we're covering the costs for not just the work that's required of the department that is issuing the permit, but also the other services within the organization that have to process that work. And all of that has to be balanced with, of course, the market and what's reasonable for us to charge in the marketplace. And we look at comparables to other counties, and we look at what we think is reasonable to capture the costs that we have. So that's that. I would, what's the other thing I was going to share? There, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are broader policy conversations that the board from time to time has. Of course, last year we pursued a vehicle registration fee. There have at times been conversations about a gas tax or a car rental tax adjustment, and certainly those are conversations that the board can initiate and pursue and direct us. These were ideas that we think are viable for us to move forward, and as we implement any of these, if it requires board approval, we will bring those forward. Welcome questions that you may have, as well as additional ideas. But again, we wanted to share with the Budget Committee that we, in addition to all of our focus on expenditure control and revenue, aligning revenues with priorities, we also are looking at ways that we can enhance existing revenues and make sure that we're keeping pace with demand and market. Alex, did you have something else to add?
I just wanted to let the budget committee know that this is sort of a sample of the ideas that we are contemplating. There were a number that we didn't feel were quite ready to bring forward yet. And we are trying to be sort of entrepreneurial in nature with some of these. I think Health and Human Services has a great example of they provide services to people who are getting their food handler certificate, and in fact provide that service for a number of other counties that residents in other counties may think they're buying a food handler's permit from County A when in fact it's actually being administered by Lane County, and that results in a sort of piece of the action that Lane County keeps for the fees that they pay. We think there's a number of sort of entrepreneurial ideas like those that we could probably take advantage of where public sector entities are in need of those kinds of services. And if we can be creative enough and get some enthusiasm from the administrator and the board to pursue them, we can, we think make some win-win messaging to the community as well as bring in some additional revenues generally.
No stone will be left unturned.
Commissioner Bozievich.
So, quick clarification, the $5 million that was swept for the CAFA, is that statewide or just Lane County's disbursement of the CAFA support?
Commissioner Bozievich is statewide.
That was statewide? Okay, so we would get approximately a tenth of that.
Yeah. And over the bank.
Yeah. Was at the Veneta Economic Development Committee meeting yesterday, and they were having a long discussion about SDCs and comparing Veneta with other cities around the county. To build a new home in Veneta, the current system development charges add up to about $17,000. And of course, I'm not sure where we are with system development charges and trying to recover future capital costs to our systems, but we can't charge water and sewer, obviously, because we don't provide that, but transportation, stormwater, and park are still places we could be utilizing system development charges to generate capital funds. Because if you notice, that's the one thing we had the biggest decrease on in public works is capital spending. So that may be something to look at in the future.
We actually, just this morning, I had a meeting with our public works staff around stormwater requirements from DEQ that are coming into place to the end of September of this year. They're going to have between a year to 2 to 3 years to implement various requirements. And so that conversation about, I believe both Eugene and Springfield assess stormwater fees on utility bills like that is not
municipality does.
And so that's a conversation that's going to come forward to the board, the broader conversation about stormwater regulations and requirements that are or not in place and need to be in place, as well as the potential for recapture of revenues to offset the costs that we will incur.
Okay. Pat?
Thanks. SDC can be a slippery slope. It's really easy to gather them and build huge reserves for saying that you're getting SDCs to pay for something that you're never actually going to pay for, something else. That's what you would see in other places. I just have a quick question. This is for you, Mike. Underassessment or misassessment, do you know what is the range of how much money we're leaving on the table there countywide? Is it hundreds of thousands or is it millions of dollars?
It really depends. A lot of areas, again, haven't been looked at physically since the early 90s, early to mid-90s. So I would it would be really hard to estimate a guess. I know we did a reappraisal project in the university area about 3 years ago, and we did find substantial emitted property that was not on the tax rolls. That area particularly was looked at because of the change in the market and the high demand for multifamily properties. We found a lot of properties that we converted from garages to apartments and other changes as such. But there are, I know when we started reappraisal, when we received funding in 89 and 90, large areas or large numbers of properties that barns, shops, other items that were on the tax roll.
So you couldn't really just hazard a guess. At some point, maybe we can just sit down and kind of work. We're not going to balance our budget on underappraised properties. Okay.
Yeah, sure, there was a couple things. I'd like to tag on to Commissioner Bozovich, STC fees. One area we do charge an STC fee on parks, but it's only been collected in the unincorporated areas, and that was one of the things. Over the years, we had conversations with cities, but it would really be nice if the city of Springfield and Eugene would collect that for us, because we do have several parks that are within or benefited from the residents of Eugene and Springfield that are definitely impacted as communities grow. I wanted to just kind of weigh in on this wireless infrastructure development. I mean, sometimes these can be very controversial, as we saw probably most of us read about the Crossfire Church trying to do one in, I think, South Eugene. But I was wondering if these properties receive the money, so like Glenwood and the Delta compound, are those resources going into like Public Works Department specifically? So hypothetically, if Parks was able to go through a process and get public support, that maybe there's 3 or 4 park areas that are, key areas that could benefit from cell tower implementation, then that could actually be a pretty substantial revenue for Parks Department, couldn't it?
Yeah. The idea is that the asset, the fund that holds the asset should benefit from the revenue generated under that scenario. So if it's waste management, it should go to waste management. If it's parks, it should go to parks. If it's a general funded facility, then it should go to the general.
We have some key parks that are in areas that I think have access to power that could probably really improve cell tower use and would be beneficial to community safety if the general public think that it's appropriate to do.
I think Alex actually might have some comment, maybe a little more detail on what it is, tower versus.
Yeah, I was going to say the industry appears to be, because of the controversy that we saw, for example, down in South Eugene, the industry appears to be going more to what they're calling stealth technology. So many times, what my understanding is that these companies will be looking for buildings to hang their receptors on, and that these are getting smaller and smaller. And that, in fact, it's really less and less the cellular provider who is siting these things. It's really become a tower manager who then leases space on, for example, on a public facility to a provider. So they've managed to sort of insert themselves into that niche. But I do wonder in Lane County, especially given the rural nature, if what you're talking about may come true, where there are some park sites that are particularly well suited for the facility. The way I understand it is that a lot of these companies will come in and do an entire plan for the municipality or the county and really take a look at coverage versus opportunity in existing facilities.
And if I might, I just add that, case in point, the Masonic Lodge, Eugene Masonic Lodge, across from Austin Stadium, they built a huge building that's just solely for cellular use, and the Masonic Lodge gets an incredible monthly payment for that, for 6 football games and maybe a few baseball games. That could have been located probably on Sherwood property just as well, and the Sherwood Center could have been taking in some resources. So I think it's good to connect and understand what's needed. I know that for myself, if I leave here in the evening at the right time, quitting time at 5 or 5:30, and I try to make a telephone call, it's pretty normal that I might drop that call once or twice because of the amount of activity on the cell towers here locally and people. So I think there could be an opportunity for enhanced service that we could benefit from possibly.
Okay. 4 o'clock-ish. Should we conclude that? Okay. And then again, Steve, I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to do the conversation about the committee process first?
Sure. Let's hold on. Let's look through the next item.
So Sheriff, we've moved up the agenda a little bit, 4 o'clock. You're on. And I would like to indicate, and Christine help me out here, that the budget staff hopes that we can provide direction to staff this evening on the appropriate budget adjustments by selecting an option number 1, whatever it is, and specifying a tax rate and remaining 5 cents for needed services. So I'd like to try to get to a motion and acceptance and voting and a direction on one of the options that we have been given.
So we don't have a lot to present to you since there wasn't a lot that was requested from the last work session. You're right, Mr. Chair. If the committee, after your discussion, if you feel as though you're in a place to provide some direction to staff, we would appreciate that so that we can prepare appropriate materials and make adjustments to budgets if necessary for next Thursday. So we can help you with a motion when you get to that point if you'd like that. I think we are looking for to allow you to have this discussion and looking for some clarification on narrowing the options. We do have an answer to, there were 2 or 3 questions that were asked last time, so if you'd like, maybe we could answer those. And then I think we're here, unless the sheriff has anything to add, we're here to answer questions.
I have just a couple of brief comments I want to just throw out there, and after the other night's discussion, I just wanted to point out a couple of pieces from my perspective, personally from me, and what this means to me and the Sheriff's Office generally. And I just want to remind everybody that we made a promise 3 years ago, and when Sheriff Turner and I were part of that community conversation, we made that promise not lightly, and we made that promise absolutely intending to keep it. And so as we move through this discussion, I think one of the things that's very important is that, from my perspective, my integrity is at stake here if we can't keep that promise, and certainly the Sheriff's Office as a whole. And so I want to make sure that we don't have conversations that seem to maybe waver from the intent of the original voter approval, which is discussions about where to maybe use or move this money or funding and other options. And I would prefer to stay the course that we have this discussion about this money is exclusively continue to be used for the 5 cents for youth services, and the discussion about adjusting the revenue is exclusively to the Sheriff's Office budget, and that amount of revenue is limited to what we need to operate effectively for the duration of this levy. And so where I'm at today is that while I think we could move through the next 2 years safely, or at the minimum level of level 6, I'm at a point at this time that I think number 5 is probably the safest level for us to say that we can finish this term of the levy out without any risk of not meeting those promises. And I know last time we talked, seemed like a little bit of maybe frustration that I wasn't outright with where I was at on a position of which level. And so I just wanted to clear that up. I'll just answer the question up front today. That's where I'm at. And I don't want to go at the absolute minimum and then have something happen that we can't meet the promise and it can't maintain the ground we've gained at this point in time. And I think it's imperative that we do that. And I think number 5 doesn't continue to collect revenues beyond what we need, but it's also a safe level that we're not going to have any hiccups along the way.
Okay. What I would like to propose, and if there's consensus, that I have a list of 5 items that I can mention. If there are 4 people that want to discuss that item, we'll discuss it. If there are not 4 people that wish to pursue that item, then I think we should table it and focus on what's left.
Dennis, before you get to that, I'd like to get an answer to one of the questions I asked last week on a note card, because I think it may add an option.
you know, to what we're talking about, because these options, I asked a question that would change the options.
Go ahead.
So I think it'd be great if we could get to Christine answering the questions from last week before we go to that.
That was,
Yes, that.
please. So there were a couple questions. There was brought up about the youth services piece of the levy and whether there was the ability to increase their portion. I did check with legal counsel. He apologizes again for not being able to attend, but he definitely will be available on Thursday for you, next Thursday, when you're deliberating and making a final decision. But he indicated that the ballot language did not make it, I'm going to do a double negative here. Maybe you could do that. You could move additional money to youth services. It did not specify any kind of cents or percentages in the ballot at all. The other question that was on the card was what would be needed by youth services if they were to build up a reserve that would be similar in nature to what the sheriff's office has. H&HS provided me with that dollar amount, so we backed into it. So it would be 3 cents additional over both years. 3 cents additional over both years would be needed to get them up to a reserve that would proportionately be about the same as what the sheriff's office would have and provide another potential year of service. I did also just want to clarify one thing on what the Budget Committee does with the tax rate. And I don't know if I was clear enough the last time that the Budget Committee limits the tax that the Board of Commissioners can levy. So that means the Board of Commissioners could go lower. So that's not something we've ever run into before where we would ever do that with a permanent rate, but I wanted to make sure that was clear. And then you already mentioned that a budget adjustment will be needed if a change is made because the proposed budget does include the 55-cent levy. So that's why we would be asking for some direction from the committee.
Okay. So do people believe that taking some things off the table would focus the discussion? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start with the easy one. Are there 4 people that want to discuss option 6? So that's off the table. Are there 4 people that want to discuss option 5? Okay, so that remains. Are there 4 people that want to discuss option 1? Okay, so that we can take that off the conversation. Are there 4 people that want to discuss movement of general fund money? Okay, so we don't need to discuss that. And then based on what you just said, Christine, looks like youth services, the nickel to 8 cents is something we want to discuss. Are there 4 people that want to discuss that?
Or something in between.
Pardon me?
Or something in between.
Something in between, okay. So we will discuss that. So we have option 5, 4, 3, and 2 on the table, and youth services.
And just out of curiosity, are these decisions of the Budget Committee part of the minutes? Because I didn't hear you state the names of who favored or opposed them.
Well, it's for discussion. It's not for decision.
Okay.
So
It's like we do with
creates
the budget.
enough interest to keep it worthy.
Actually, we don't really have any decision until the end, right?
That's correct.
So wouldn't even need to put any of this in the minutes.
I'm just trying to focus the discussion. Okay. Okay. So with that, we can go around the table. So everybody speaks. We can do it like we've been doing, where you just let me know and we go in order. Around the table, or?
I wouldn't mind starting out because I want to speak to the 3 cents for youth services and why I think that's important. I was the one that turned in the card about that, and I, you know, I'm like the sheriff. I'm leaning towards option 5. I think option 6 is cutting a little too close for me. But what you end up with option 5 is over a year's worth of reserve in the sheriff's department. But if we make no adjustment in that nickel for youth services, they don't even have 6 months of reserve at the end of the 5-year levy, which means if we fail to pass before the end of the levy, they'll have to lay off staff and close those 16 beds and go back to less than 24-hour intake at the end of that budget year. which means then if we manage to pass something later on in that year, that the sheriff's able to keep the 255 or 317 jail beds open without laying off staff, and we manage to pass something, then they have to go through that process of rehire like we had to do with the jail, and I'm trying to avoid that. And I think it's really important that we end up with an equivalent amount of time in reserves, if you get what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
In both programs, so that we're not laying off people and having to rebuild the program, and we have that full year buffer in both programs at the end of the levy. And I don't think it's that big of a change that we're changing, we're not changing the amount of general fund going into these programs. Like I read last week, that language was shall in the board order. This language was suggested approximate percentages between the two programs. I think 3 cents over the next 2 years into youth services. If you took that over the 5 years, it means we probably should have had it 6 cents in youth services. We under-calculated that one. Whereas we're probably, because we're going to 30 cents to the sheriff's office over the next 2 years, we probably could have done maybe 45 cents over the whole 5 and ended up in the same place. So it's kind of an adjustment. If we were to go option 5, it's kind of like saying, had we had a perfect crystal ball and been able to predict everything about revenues over 5 years, we probably should have put this out as a 51 cent levy or something like that, with 6 cents to youth services and 45 to the sheriff, or something like that. And I think we're still within the general framework of what we were proposing in that board order and the general percentages.
Do you have are you advocating then for 3 cents additional?
Yeah, I would advocate basically modifying option 5 to be 30 cents for the sheriff's office and 8 cents to youth services for the next, what we'll be recommending for this year, we'll have to recommend it again next year as the limitation on the board's tax rate.
Okay. How do you
38 cents.
Yeah. How do you reconcile the 9% and the 91%?
As I said, it was a suggested approximates in that board order, which means the board will have to come back and pass an additional board order amending that.
Okay, so you're comfortable with the change?
I'm comfortable with that change, whereas the general fund amount that we were putting into the jail was a shall. It was definitive.
I have heard next, or was it you, Marty?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to echo what Commissioner Bozic said and the importance of making sure that we preserve funding for youth services and provide them that gap funding should they need it for that year. And I also am curious to hear from the sheriff. I think there's 2 different things to look at. There's the board order, but in terms of the integrity and the public's perception, they voted on a ballot measure. I mean, there's some people who will dig in and look at a board order, and I agree the language gives enough room. This isn't that great of a variance based on the language of the board order that as a voter, I think it's fine. And the ballot measure is what most folks, that's what they voted on. And in looking at the language of that, it doesn't talk about how the money is to be divvied up. And so I'm wondering your impression of maintaining integrity given this proposal that's on the table, whether you feel it comports with that.
And just to clarify too, I wasn't, when I made my opening comment, I wasn't necessarily advocating that there is no change in the improvement of youth services revenue, as much as to make sure that there was some concern, I think, yesterday about what's going to happen when youth services revenue goes down if we reduce this rate. And so to clarify that this proposal, as it came from the sheriff's office, exclusively involved the sheriff's part of the revenue. And that's why I was making sure that any discussion about this preserves completely the youth services side of this, the 5 cents. I really haven't thought about increasing the youth services side, because in discussions we've had, the response from youth services, they were funded at the level to carry them forward. So I don't know that presents a significant issue. I know that in the conversations with the board, when the levy was being proposed for the ballot, the discussion was essentially exclusively sheriff's office funding at 50 cents based on the polling. And then right at the point that the board was discussing putting it on the ballot for a vote, the board's discussion added 5 cents specifically for youth services. So, that was the conversation in the board meeting. That was the conversation, and the intent was 50 cents for the sheriff's office and then add 5 cents exclusively for youth services on top of it. And then the board order was written that says approximately that split should be carried forward for the 5 years, and it does provide the approximate. I guess my core concern is that we don't monkey with this a lot, and if we can just keep it as pure and straightforward as it was when it was passed is my core concern. A couple of cents for youth services, does that derail it? I don't know where the public's perception is on that completely, but I would ask that we keep the conversations about adjustments of the levy revenue or adjustments of other revenues in place of the levy revenue as much off the table as possible, just so we don't muddy the water on this.
I guess just the measure was 55 cents per 1,000 assessed value for these two things: maintaining the minimum of 255 jail beds and providing additional counseling and secure treatment and detention for Lane County youth offenders. So, as far as voters, we're still considering lowering a tax rate and delivering what we promised.
Right, and I don't argue that. I just, whatever adjustments we make, as long as they're minimal at best, I think, and 3 cents is pretty minimal. I mean, I'm not arguing that we shouldn't look at the youth services side. Makes sense that they have a year's reserve similarly. So, I mean, this discussion's not out of place. It's just the more we discuss options and talk about general funds and everything else that we've talked about in this in the last meeting, that's what starts giving me concerns about what the public's perception is going to be of what are we doing with their funds.
Okay, Herb?
I stated at the last meeting that it was really important to me that we keep the integrity of what's being done with these funds intact through this process. And first of all, I would like to state that I wouldn't want to make a decision. My final decision on this will come next week at Thursday after we've had an opportunity to public on it. But I do agree that the citizens voted on a package to provide these services, and that as a citizen myself, I'd like to see them be able to continue forward in a smooth manner as much as possible. And so in my thought for this budget committee here is that I would consider actually, and I don't want it to be monkeying by any means or be considered that way, but to meet the intent of the original measure as much as possible, to keep a fluid motion going forward. And if that means, because of the situation, there's, one's a little high and one's a little low, we're actually just doing a business process by trying to keep it going together. So I would consider on that, like I said, my decision will come on Thursday.
Okay. Commissioner?
Christine, my understanding is that over the last 2 years, we've put more general fund money into the jail portion of the budget. Is that correct? Okay. If we put more money, general fund money, into the sheriff's office, couldn't we then reduce the amount of the levy even more than what we're doing?
If you were to change the proposed budget and
Yeah.
put more general funding?
Yeah. In other words,
Equation
we are
works, yes.
we're cutting positions that are general funded in other departments, and we're taking that money and we're increasing. We have in the last 2 years, we've increased the amount of general fund money going into the sheriff's office. We are now seeing a buildup in the reserve of the levy funds. My question was, if we took more general fund out of the other departments, we could lower these funds even more than is being proposed. Okay. I think the reverse is also true. We could use the funds that are in the levy that were identified by the voters and by the ballot measure, and we could use those funds to help run the jail and make sure we had the 255 jail beds, and use those funds for making sure we had 255 jail beds. And in my view, we wouldn't have to make the reductions that are in the proposed budget, because we're taking general fund money and using that in the sheriff's office more than. In fact, there was a criticism that we were not putting enough money into the jail, and the county responded by putting more general fund money into the jail. So it seems like we're taking funds away from other departments so that we can say, well, you know, we didn't really want to spend that money on other aspects of the jail, which are necessary to keep 255 inmates in the jail. So I think we're going in the opposite direction that we should be going. I don't think we should use those levy funds for any other purpose other than for the jail and for youth services. And it seems to me like we're cutting in other areas in order to maintain more, not maintain, but to add more general fund dollars into the sheriff's office. I don't understand that as a rationale. Why would we do that? I mean, it's obvious these funds are intended for the jail and for youth services. We're not meeting our needs by not using those funds and giving them back to the voters who authorized this, and then turn around and cut, and what is the proposal? 26 positions, general fund positions?
22 positions.
22 positions.
Countywide.
Okay.
Approximately 6 positions, a net 6 positions reduced in the general fund.
Okay.
Because we add some, right? We add 3 mental health positions and probation officer good fund. That would be a net reduction in general fund of 6.
Okay. Net general fund reduction of 6. So we're taking, in my view, we're taking that money that could be used for those positions, and we're saying, oh, we want to lower the amount that the voters authorized for the levy, for the jail, for the 255 jail beds. We want to lower that because we're taking general fund money that could be used for those other positions. It seems like if we're talking about being consistent with what the voters passed, we would say the voters passed this measure, let's collect these funds. We have one tentative estimate that we are currently over collecting, and that's what's powering this idea. Well, I would say let's wait for another year at least and see if that's really true in a year, to see if we're really going to have that. Again, the budget committee doesn't have to lower this. The board in the next month, as we get more information, could lower it. Or we could just collect that money and have the money available. And then in the subsequent year, if the board and budget committee decided, well, that's a good idea, let's cut that rate. They could cut that rate and wipe out that reserve very easily in the ensuing year. So I'm agreeing with her that we want to make sure we have some glide path here and not to have these reductions. Talk about being consistent. We're talking at one time about these other revenue ideas at a time we're telling the voters, well, we have enough money. In fact, we have too much money. That's why we want to give some of it back. That doesn't really make sense to me. So I would just really urge caution on the idea that we're not going to use these funds for their intended purpose. We're not going to tax the people what they authorized us to tax them to be used for these purposes.
Okay, I have Commissioner Farr, Commissioner Like, and Commissioner Bozovich, and then Steve. So
Thank you. I listened hard to what the sheriff just had to say, and what the sheriff was talking about was integrity and promises made, promises kept. Is what I heard Sheriff Trapp saying. And while I would love to add 3 cents or more than 3 cents to the youth facility, double it, triple it, and then it's still not enough. But the board order states approximately 9%. And by adding 3 cents, all of a sudden we're not approximately 9%, we're 21%. Now, does anybody in this room think that 21 is approximately 9? It isn't. So that's going away from the actual spirit of the actual board order that I'm reading right here. It says approximately 9%. So while I would love to do that, I think the fact that it's a nickel, it still adjusts the percentage of the total money that's being levied. Makes it it's still not approximate anymore. It's still more like from 9 it goes up to about 16%. But 21% is just, I think, pushing it too far beyond the normal ability to say, yes, you're staying within the spirit of the board order. That this is what the sheriff sold to the, not sold, but stated to the public, is it's going to be, as per this board order right here, approximately 9%. Well, 21% isn't approximately 9%. So to me, whatever discussion we have tonight and whatever discussion we have prior to the decision that the budget committee makes, and then subsequent to that, whatever discussion the board makes, we've got to consider that throughout the discussion on this levy, purposely, the county commissioners didn't really go out and say a great deal about it. It was the sheriff that was out there on the levy. It's the sheriff's integrity that's on the line. It's the office of the sheriff whose integrity that's on the line. And in 1 year or 2 years, we're going to, if we want to continue the services in the jail, we're going to need to ask for an extension. And if there's any question regarding the integrity of how we handle this money, then we're not going to get that extension.
Okay. Commissioner Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think at the very beginning, just a point of clarification, at the very beginning, didn't you ask if there was folks interested in having a discussion on the general fund?
That's correct.
And I didn't see any hands go up.
No.
Okay. Just a point there. I think on the piece that we're discussing, especially with Commissioner Bozovich's 3 cent increase, I was fortunate enough when I was mayor to be involved in 3 very successful public safety campaigns. One was a 24/7. The second was a capital bond measure to build a jail, and the third was to fund the jail in Springfield, all successfully passed. What I found through that, and I think what we were talking about, and I know in Springfield, I remember when Sheriff Turner and the staff, I was pleased to see the 11 members from the Sheriff's Department come to Springfield to talk to the 5 folks from the public. It was great. That was wonderful, so I appreciate that. But the reality, that's what was happening. And I think part of it was people are interested in the service delivery. And that is absolutely what I found out, is service delivery. Not being hung up on wasn't the percentage. I think what the language here on the board order has flexibility. And so we are still providing, in a sense, a reduction to the taxpayers, but yet making sure that there is the potential reserves both for the Sheriff's Department and youth services. And I think overall, as long as the public knows there is a significant service delivery, the Sheriff's Department, the Sheriff Trapp and their staff have been able to deliver this with less money, but yet you have increased the number. We guaranteed 255 and you're at 317. That, frankly, is an incredible number. And you're doing it with less than what you were suggested. The stories we've heard from just those 16 beds added in youth services has been absolutely incredible. But they've been great stories to share. And I think that that's the piece that we need to make sure that we're commenting out to the public. The public's, to me, and again, this is my experience back in Springfield, it wasn't about what percentage here. They wanted to know what was being delivered. And when the public knows that you have 24/7 coverage in the city of Springfield, when you call, somebody's going to be at your house in 5 to 10 minutes. that a 100-bed jail, by the way, is still not at capacity. But if you look at the reduction in property crime rates of the top 10 cities in the state, Springfield has just been going down like this because of service delivery. Not percentages, but service delivery. And I think that's the piece here we need to focus in on this, is not so much the percentage. I think the public is going to appreciate what service delivery that the Lane County is providing. Frankly, the Sheriff's Department is providing service delivery that the citizens said we wanted, and Youth Services is providing service delivery that exactly what we wanted. And if that 3 cents will increase that reserve piece, frankly, I think that is a huge victory for the citizens of Lane County. At the same time, you're still going to say, especially if option 5 is where we want to go, you're still going to say, by the way, we're cutting your taxes by 30%. I mean, that's a pretty darn good story to be telling to the public, in my view. So that's just, I think the 3 cents, a novel idea, Jay. I'll just tell you that right now. I didn't even come to my mind. I think it's a good idea, and I think it keeps the integrity of exactly what we were talking about from the very beginning to the public. Go ahead.
Thanks. So, Lori was talking about what the average voter is going to think, and they're not going to really track the nickel versus 8 cents and all that. What they're just going to see is a 30.9% decrease in their tax levy. And when they get their bills, it won't have the 55, it'll have 38. They won't care whether it's 30 cents to the sheriffs and 8 cents to Youth Services. The other thing is, when you talk percentages, this is a 5-year levy. And if you look at the percentages as we originally proposed it over those 5 years, we roughly staying in the nickel and 50 cents have been that 9 and 91 cents. But changing the last 2 years to 8 and 30, over the 5 years, it's 12.8% and 87.1% approximately. 12.8 is not that far from 9%. If you're only looking at a single year, that's how you get to 21%. If you're only looking at 1 out of 5 years, it's a 5-year levy. And we're going to put 12.8% of that 5-year levy into Youth Services if we do the 8 cents, and we're going to put 87.1, approximately, maybe 87.2, into the Sheriff's Office. Those are pretty close to 9 and 91. Close enough, I don't even think we have to mess with the board order as far as approximately goes. It's staying fairly close to 10% and 90%. 12.8, 87.2. So, I really think it's important to maintain those equal time period reserves, because I think that's, as we think about how we're going to continue on and move ahead. And ultimately, when we start, if we do get a successful levy at the end of this, we're going to want to start with kind of equal time period reserves in both funds anyway, even if we start changing with how we want it, the amounts of the levy and all that. So we start out with fairly equal reserves. And I just want to touch on what did we really promise in this thing. And I take a little umbrage that it was just the sheriff out there, not the commissioners. I didn't see the sheriff there in front of the Lane County Republicans or the 912 groups. That was me that was pitching that to those groups. It was me that went out in my community and all that. It was me that made the fundraising calls that went to the Yes campaign. My name's on this too, and the integrity of this. And one of the things we promised very clearly, because there was a history of this in Lane County of shifting funds, was not to reduce the general, not to say suddenly we have more money in this fund than we thought we were. So we're going to take that general fund amount that we promised to put in this, and we're going to spend it somewhere else. That's exactly what we told the voters we would not do. And that's why no one raised their hands when they said something about general fund. We cannot go there. We cannot take any of the general fund that we committed to either of these programs and move it somewhere else and spend it somewhere else to avoid a cut somewhere else. Because that's exactly what the voters said. You guys have done that in the past, and if we vote yes on this, you better damn well not do that again. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard about that 20 years ago when that happened, And it'll be over my dead body if we do that. So we have to be really careful about maintaining that promise. We had some commitments we made. We had a spreadsheet in front of us that showed how much general fund was going to be needed. We can't drop below what that spreadsheet said at the time we put this on the ballot and start monkeying around there. So it's what we promised, and we have to stick to what we promised, I think. And I think it's a prudent move to add the 3 cents to youth services. It changes the percentages over the 5 years by 12.8 to 87.1 from the 9 to 91.
Steve, go ahead.
I'll defer to other committee members.
Okay. Larry?
I'm a little confused. Commissioner Bozich, you've been saying it would be 30 cents to the sheriff and 8 cents to the service. That's 38 cents. I thought we were talking about moving 3% from the sheriff. So it would be 27 to the sheriff.
No, 38 cents is what I was proposing.
Yeah.
But adding 3 cents to option 5.
And not changing the sheriff's at all.
Right.
I was thinking we would switch to 3 cents.
No, that's not what I was proposing.
So option 5 would be 38 cents. 30 cents
As I'm
to sheriff's.
30
That's right. Okay.
A modified option plan. And trust me, I'm not going to argue against 3 pennies today. I'm not going to argue against that.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I was just curious, what was under the original projections, the projected reserve that youth services would have? Anybody know?
Take that.
It's 5.
When we looked at that, we looked at doing what is our typical prudent person reserve, and that's what we've been hanging on. That's what we've done, is kept that. It's a pretty small amount. Do you remember? 680, yeah.
Right. So what were we going to end at? Like 800 something?
Do we know? I don't have those.
It was actually going to go up by about 50,000 at the end of this upcoming budget, and would probably drop by about 50 in the next one from what the projection was. So it'd end up right around 600,000, which is not, 1.3 or about 1.4 by the time we end up expenses to keep those same services. So it's not even a year's worth.
So this 3 cents would go directly into reserve. It wouldn't provide additional service.
Right. So we're not changing the service level that was proposed in the ballot language, which was the adding 8 beds of detention and 8 beds of treatment. It's about building this people reserve.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Okay. Lord?
I just want to add, the whole, when this first came up, and the whole reason I brought up the question and asked, could we change the apportionment to youth services? When you want to talk about again, as a citizen member, a voter, perception, integrity, if we get to the end of this levy and it isn't renewed or the process isn't quick enough, I think you would have a real problem with perception if the service levels changed between the jail and youth services because we managed the money in such a way where we had an opportunity to do so differently and not have such a gap. So I'll just offer that perception as a citizen member.
Okay. I have a question. You won't like it. If we left the funding at, say, 30 and 5, could you write a check to youth services for $1 million or some appropriate amount to get their reserve?
Yeah, it's the same conversation. It's whether the collection is separated differently or whether the already collected funds are separated differently. There's $20 million in the reserve right now. That's still the same conversation, that we just need to make sure we've made a decision to stay in line with what promises were made on how the money would be managed, and I'm not arguing against the conversation of the 3 cents for youth services. What was concerning me more in the last discussion we had before tonight was there was some discussion about general funds, and again tonight there's been some discussion about general funds, and my comments weren't pointed to say we can't talk about youth services piece, because that is the intended use of this levy. A portion of that is youth services, but it seems like in the last conversation we got a little scattered around about a lot of ideas and options, and so my intent tonight was exclusively to limit us to an option that I think preserves our ability to safely manage these funds through the next 2 years, to preserve the service levels that are in place today. And I think option 5 is what does that, and my comments about getting off track and kind of monkeying with the language was more focused at a lot of the discussion that happened that I didn't want to see go tonight about supplanting other revenues and funds in the sheriff's office jail budget because we have extra levy money that we can move around.
Okay.
I think that is deadly to continuing this conversation with our community.
Okay, Christina, is this to my question?
It is.
Okay.
So 2 things I would like you to consider is that the budget committee, typically when you set the tax at the end of with your motions, you have specified the 50 and 5 cents. So that has already dedicated those funds to those services in the past. I also think any switch internally, that is going to be impacted with the external audit and difficult for them to track. So financial staff would not recommend any movement between the 2 departments of existing funds.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else want to weigh in? All right. Well,
I guess I'd like to say I like Commissioner Bozich's suggestion because the sheriff will still get the 30 cents in option 5. And youth services will get 3 cents. So maybe it's really more.
okay. I've heard one individual say they're not wanting to get to a motion tonight.
I would clarify that I think it would be good to be able to provide guidance on what they should have figured out for numbers for options. And so if we wanted, like you said previously, right now my intent is to limit the discussion to the revised number 5.
Okay.
If somebody else would think maybe 4 or revised number 4 or straight number 5.
Just, Mr. Chair, I think the intent of any motion you make tonight would be just to direct staff to prepare, so give an indication of where you're headed. It does not at all preclude the committee from changing its mind because your decision comes next Thursday.
Okay.
So we're not at all wanting to indicate that you need to make a decision now. You don't, and you don't have to give us a direction. We just feel like there would be some value in having you give us some direction if you're prepared to do that.
Okay. Well, why don't we try to come to one conclusion or one recommendation, and that would be to go to 8 cents for youth services. Do I hear a motion?
And 30 cents for,
Pardon me?
just to fully clarify, 30 cents for
No.
the sheriff and
I'm not talking about the sheriff.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't settled on the sheriff
Understood.
yet. Youth services, 5 to 8 cents. So no matter where the recommendation, the early indication to staff would be.
I think what you want to do is ask somebody for a motion to direct staff to pursue that option in preparing the final motions for the committee rather than we're settling on 8 cents tonight. We're actually just directing staff tonight to prepare for what we'll vote on next Thursday.
Okay.
So
In the form of a motion?
I have a motion.
Pardon me?
I have a motion.
Okay.
I move to direct staff to prepare numbers on option 5 with modification that youth services be changed from 5 cents to 3 cents. That's option 5 cents. Excuse me, from 5 cents to 3 cents. From 5 cents to 8 cents. So it's option 5, 30 cents and 8 cents. And the staff would come back with the actual numbers on that.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to increase option 5 to 8 cents for youth services. Is there any further discussion on that specific motion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so we have that. My vote, I would vote option 4, and that's based on my sidewalk conversations and conversations with the president of the Eugene County area or Lane County area of one of the major banks. I believe that the citizens I spoke with and the other professionals that I spoke with, they said that reserve is, you want to hold on to that because we could have unforeseen circumstances. We could have unforeseen circumstances. So my preference is 4.
We're pretty close to it, though.
Pardon me?
38 cents. Yeah. 2 cents shy.
Okay. Well, I would do 35 and 8.
Would you like a motion to have that prepared as well for Thursday?
Well, I don't know. I may be, that train of option 5 may have already left the station.
I'm open.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to hear.
Okay.
I'd like to hear more tonight if you have it, and I'd like to hear more on Thursday if you have it.
Well, we are out of time tonight because I would like to do justice to the conversation you want to have about the budget committee.
And I would tell you, Mr. Chair, that's we can have that conversation after this process. My opinion is it's best for you to take the time to get this decision.
Okay. So give me some help here. How do you want to proceed?
I'm okay with having two options to talk about going forward, but
I was going to say I'm satisfied with the one we moved forward. So.
Okay. Well, let's.
Yeah, we're starting to approach 2 years of reserves with option 4. And then if you're going to have to eke up the youth services amount to have an equal number of months of reserve. So it's not just about going to 40 cents for the sheriff. You might have to go to 9 cents for youth services. So you end up with an equal number of months of reserve. And frankly, I'd rather leave that $3 million in our citizens' hands rather than sitting in the bank here in Lane County.
Well, we have an exquisite balance here.
Yeah.
And I think what Commissioner Sorensen said has some relevance and is consistent with some of the things that I'm hearing. And that would be, we take a step this year, say we go to 4 this year and 35 and 8, it's a reduction. Next year we'll have another year under our belt, perhaps meet the projections that we're looking at now, or go one way or the other. We hopefully could take another reduction next year, because now we only have 1 year left to budget for and deal with. And then we go to the voters in 18 and say, look, we've reduced this 2 years in a row. Here's our proposal to you for the next 5 years. We have 2 years of reduction, hopefully. So I'm advocating for number 4 at 35 and 8. Okay? Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I just was going to say, depending on the action that the committee takes and the budget the board ultimately adopts, I think at that point we would likely, in the preparation of the 17-18 proposed budget, we will likely include the adjusted rate for that second year.
Right.
We didn't propose an adjusted rate because we felt like that was a significant policy decision that the budget committee and the board needed to contemplate. But again, I just wanted to say that you are taking action for next year, but I view the action you're taking next year as direction for the following year, and it doesn't preclude you from changing that in your process. But I just wanted to say that you can anticipate that we propose a budget in fiscal year 17-18 that would reflect the rate consistent with the action you take for next fiscal year.
Okay. Somebody had their hand up down here.
I wanted to know if you would entertain a motion to have staff prepare the option you described.
Is that a motion?
That'll be a motion.
Okay, so basically your motion is indicating that staff would prepare option 4 and 5 with 8 cents to youth services?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? I will second. Because that's what I want. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to have staff prepare option 4 and 5. Any further discussion on that motion? Sheriff, do you want to weigh in on that?
I'm not sure what else I can add that I haven't already said.
Okay. So all those in favor?
Can we get clarification that in the option 4, do you want to see the sheriff's portion and do you want to see the youth services portion be proportionate to the sheriff's as it relates to the reserve, or just?
No, we've already made them. I believe we've approved a motion at 8 cents for youth services. So it's 35 and 8, and option 5 is 30 and 8.
We've approved a motion to have option 5 with 8 cents. We haven't
necessarily set 8 cents permanently as youth services. If you want to change it in this in your option 4. And I think the motion was to add up. It was just for option 4, not option 4 and 5.
Okay.
We've already approved option 5 with 8 cents.
Okay.
To be brought back.
Okay, we've approved option 5 at 30 and 8. Is that correct? Okay. Do I hear a motion to direct staff to prepare the numbers for option 4 at 35 and 8?
What happened? I thought that was my motion.
Yeah.
Well, yours is
That was his
4 and 5.
motion.
4 and 5. Now we're just limiting it to 4.
No, he said 4.
Pardon me?
You reread it as 4 and 5.
Right, okay. But your motion is 4.
Right, yes.
Okay. And I will second that motion. So we're option 4, directing staff to prepare the numbers for option 4 at 35 and 8. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion fails. So we are basically at 5, 30, and 8. Okay, so there's your direction. Subject to final approval next Thursday, correct? Okay. Does that work for everybody? Any heartburn over any of that? Okay.
We can prepare arguments, maybe to have us go back to 4.
Well, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. Okay, we have about 7 minutes. We have handouts and things for next week. If you can pass those out.
We also have just when I discussed general expense, I promised to give you the dues sheet that you have seen in the past. And there is 2 changes from current year that you will, you won't notice because it doesn't show what it is current year. But El Rapa dues have been proposed to go back into the road fund, which is where they historically were. The last 4 or 5 years they've been in the general fund. And then there is also a Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association, which current year was approved by the Board of Commissioners year to go from the general fund. It's going to go back to video lottery in the proposed budget, which is where it historically was paid from. So that's information for you. And then we typically hand out the budget committee deliberation process worksheet for you to think over before the next meeting. This is similar to what you did a little bit today, where you take the 4 votes on whether you want to discuss options, then how you move through your process. You'll have technical adjustments. I will note for you that if the 4-H extension service ballot measure passes next Tuesday, there will be an adjustment to the budget for that because that money does come through the county, goes directly to them from a special revenue fund. But I will have that ready for you if that occurs. And then there'll be discussion and motions to approve the budget. Also, in the past, if the committee still wants to do this, typically if you have any proposals as committee members, you can email those to me ahead of time, and I put up at the top there if you want to send them to me by noon next Wednesday. Then I will email the whole list out to the committee Thursday morning so that you have that information before you come for your last meeting.
Okay. Anything else? Do we want to get back to a quick discussion of the minutes? Or hold that for next?
I'll just say that I think the purpose of these minutes is to not only guide the discussion, guide the current discussion by knowledge of what has happened, 2 weeks ago, but also 3 years ago and 2 years ago. And I don't think that the way these minutes are being put together really serve any purpose. They're not required by Oregon law, so it's not an issue of what's required. If this actually is what we're going to keep doing, I'd say let's get rid of it because that's not accomplishing anything. So as an economy move, I would say let's get rid of it. As a matter of it helping us, I'd say let's decide that minutes do help. If minutes don't help, then let's forget it, and we're complying with the law by having a recording. And I just think that this is kind of doesn't really help anything, in my view. So as an economy move, we could either get rid of it, or if people thought that minutes were of value to future members of the committee, present members of the committee, then we would have actual minutes. But the way it's written now, it's like, it's superfluous to what the law requires. From my reading of the law, it says recording or minutes. So if they're helping staff, I say, well, tell us how they're helping staff. They're not helping me as a member. I doubt if anybody else is really helped by it. So I say get rid of it.
Yeah.
I would just say, I imagine the staff time is relatively small for these 5 meetings we have, and I think it would help with the transparency of what goes on if there were actually detailed minutes. I mean, I know you can go watch the whole 3-hour video and get everything, but for I think most community members want to watch in 3 hours to get a gist of what they were curious about. It's probably not going to happen. So I wouldn't suggest anything for the entire board stuff, but just for our 5 meetings, it seems positive.
So having lived through when we had a board secretary, we summarized board discussions and then spending a half hour arguing between commissioners about whether they summarized somebody's statements accurately or not. When you do minutes, and if they're not word per word, you don't have a court stenographer in here, then you start spending a lot of time adjusting minutes and worrying about, is somebody 2 years later going to go back and read these minutes and misconstrue completely the context of what I said in that meeting, versus I would rather have them have to go back and actually watch the video and hear what I really said in the actual words, in the context I said it. And so it's, the outline minutes allow you to see what were they talking about in that meeting, what votes were taken in that meeting, how people voted, and then I can decide if I want to actually go back and hear what people said in what context. That, I think, really is very transparent. You're going beyond what, the recording's the state law. We have the recording, we meet state law. But I think by having something online in print, people can look at, which is similar to our board thing, and then ultimately in the board minutes, if we pass something, you can click on the password and you can actually pull up the order we passed, things like that. It's helpful there, but when you start getting into summarized minutes, they summarize minutes at El Rapa meetings that I just finished coming from 5 minutes late here, and we were, almost every time we have to spend 10 or 15 minutes on the minutes where they made incorrect. They credit the wrong person with a statement, or they misconstrued what somebody said, and we're fixing and wordsmithing. Better to have somebody watch a video.
Okay.
The one thing that I think might be helpful with these minutes is to potentially add times of when these discussions start. Because for me, when I go back and review minutes, I have to agree it's so much easier to go back and review what's actually been said so you get a full context of it instead of a summarized piece. If they could put a timestamp when we have these different discussions so that it is easier, so you don't have to watch 3 hours worth of
Here, 5 minutes of discussion. Yeah.
I think that could be beneficial to help the public get to the actual conversation that they probably want to hear. They probably want to say, okay, the board talked about the reducing the levy today. They don't want to watch the whole 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Then go right to the minutes that
I guess what I would want to see.
Okay. I think I'm going to close that discussion by saying I believe that's a policy decision, what minutes are created for this body. And as a policy decision, I recommend it go back to the Board of Commissioners and County Administration to provide the minutes that they feel are appropriate. It is 5 o'clock.
We didn't get time to offer feedback into the process this year, which I think is important. So I don't know,
We talked
Chair,
about that.
when
We're going to deal with that on next
do
Thursday.
that on
Next Thursday. Yeah. Or we can also send out a survey if that works better for people, if you want some time to think about it after the whole.
I would just advocate for some iterative conversation. I think sometimes people have comments and it sparks other thoughts. So I would advocate a survey's fine, but I don't want it to replace the conversation.
Okay. We're adjourned.